Chapter 24-26. Rescue. To prove that I'm not talking nonsense, the 8 elders should go and check the exit of the divine Pill's secret realm. Zhuowen said coldly. 7th elder, go and check what happened to the exit, the 2nd elder said as he looked at the 7th elder. The 7th elder was startled. Then he left the Pill Tower unwillingly. After a short while, the 7th elder came back, and his eyes became serious as he said, the exit was sealed by an evil force, and the teleportation array at the exit was destroyed. The 7th elder's words caused the other elders to explode, and at the same time, they were convinced by Zhuowen's words. 2nd elder, we should seal the 3 exits immediately. After all, the Rakshasa king is not to be underestimated, and if he is released, it will definitely be a great disaster, the 7th elder suddenly said. The other elders also agreed with the 7th elder's words. Although the 3 exits were basically accessible through teleportation arrays, the locations of the exits were carefully chosen. However, the location of the exit was also carefully chosen. Basically, it was set up at the border between the divine Pill's secret realm and the Pill Furnace starfield. Therefore, if a powerful cultivator wanted to use brute force to break the barrier at the border, he would be able to cross between the 2 places. The Rakshasa King's original plan was to kill all the cultivators in the divine Pill's secret realm. After he devoured all the cultivators in the divine Pill's secret realm, he would break the barrier at the border and enter the Pill Furnace star area to start a massacre. No, there are many cultivators in the divine Pill's secret realm, and they're all from other forces in the 6 Desires heavenly realm. If we seal the exit and cause these cultivators to die tragically in the divine Pill's secret realm, we will provoke public anger, the 2nd elder said solemnly. 2nd elder, compared to the danger of the Rakshasa king, I'd rather accept the condemnation of the other forces. Moreover, we are forced to do this, and I think the other forces understand the big picture, the 3rd elder, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said. The 3rd elder's words also received the approval of the other elders. However, Zhuowen said coldly, I'm telling you this not because I want you to seal off the exit, but because I want you to think of a way to open the exit. If you don't take any measures, I'll make this matter public and let others see the face of your Pill Tower. When Zhuowen saw that these Pill Tower elders only cared about the safety of the Pill Tower and the Pill Furnace galaxy, they didn't even put the people who had entered the divine Pill's secret realm in their eyes. The moment Zhuowen's words came out, the surrounding elders who were discussing also quieted down. Their gazes were all gloomy as they looked at Zhuowen. The 2nd elder spoke again. Zhuo, you shouldn't have brought this up without any reason, right? Zhuowen nodded his head and said, I need elders' help. I need my clone to go in and help my true body. Moreover, I don't believe that the divine Dan mystic realm doesn't have an additional exit. I need to know where it is. Who do you think you are? You actually want us to provide an additional exit? Don't even think about it. It's impossible for there to be an additional exit. Even if there was, I wouldn't give it to you. The surrounding elders all looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly gazes. They all started to talk at once. Enough. All of you can leave now. I will deal with this matter. The 2nd elder shouted in a low voice. The other 7 elders immediately shut their mouths. They looked at the 2nd elder with hesitation on their faces. However, they obviously didn't dare to disobey the 2nd elder's order. They all stood up and left the 10th floor of the Pill Tower. After a short while, only Zhuowen and the 2nd elder were left on the 10th floor. Zhuo, if what you said is true, this matter is very serious. Do you have any suggestions? The 2nd elder asked in a low voice. Save the cultivators who survived in the divine Dan mystic realm. Then seal the divine Dan mystic realm. Zhuowen said. The 2nd elder nodded and said, I also agree with this point. There is indeed an additional exit. This jade slip records that additional exit. After saying that, the 2nd elder threw a crystal-clear jade slip to Zhuowen and continued. You can inform the rest of the people in the divine Dan mystic realm about the exit. Don't let the Luo Sha king know about it. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with it. I know. Thank you, 2nd elder. Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, Also, where do I go in now? The second elder smiled and looked at the alchemy fire on Zhuowen's shoulder. He said, "You need the little guy on your shoulder to enter the divine Dan mystic realm. This time, I will also enter the divine Dan mystic realm with you." Zhuowen was stunned. He looked at the alchemy fire on his shoulder. The alchemy fire also looked at Zhuowen lazily. "Little guy, can you help me open the entrance to the divine Dan mystic realm again? Please," Zhuowen said with a smile. Just when the second elder was about to remind him that he shouldn't do that, the alchemy fire on Zhuowen's shoulder yawned and jumped up, turning into a flaming door in front of him. The second elder looked at this scene with a stiff expression. When he opened the divine Dan mystic realm, it took him a lot of effort to do so. However, Zhuowen only needed to say a word, and the alchemy fire immediately opened it for him. The difference in treatment was too big. "Second elder, let's go in together." Zhuowen didn't care about what the second elder was thinking. After he entered the flaming door, he waved his hand at the second elder. The second elder shrugged his shoulders helplessly and followed him. At this moment, under the divine Dan mystic realm tower, Zhuowen's original body slowly stood up. He raised his head and looked at the top of the tower. There, two figures slowly descended. They were the black-robed Zhuowen and the second elder from the Pill Tower. "Second elder, you have a clone?" Yao Xiangjuan looked up and muttered to herself in surprise. The second elder and the black-robed Zhuowen landed beside Zhuowen. The two of them nodded at Yao Xiangjuan, then looked at Zhuowen's original body. "Second elder, the evil spirit army is coming from the north. They are advancing towards the south. I hope you can help me inform those cultivators who don't know about this and ask them to gather at the entrance." Zhuowen's original body looked at the second elder and said. The second elder nodded. This matter wasn't difficult for him. "Zhuo, what about you?" The second elder looked at Zhuowen and asked. "I'll go and hold back the evil spirit army and Luo Sha King. I'll buy you some time," Zhuowen said calmly. As soon as these words came out, the second elder and Yao Xiangjuan sucked in a breath of cold air. Yao Xiangjuan immediately objected. "You can't go. You should know better than me how terrifying Luo Sha King and the evil spirit army are. If you go, you'll just be throwing your life away. You can't go." The second elder also advised, "Zhuowen, you should also come with us to inform the other cultivators. When the time comes, we'll save as many as we can. You shouldn't take the risk yourself." Zhuowen looked at the second elder and Yao Xiangjuan's attitude. He knew that it was useless for him to explain himself. He nodded and said, "Then I'll also go with you to inform the other cultivators." After reaching an agreement, Zhuowen and the others started to move. Chapter 24-27. Opening the exit. Actually, there was no need for Zhuowen to inform them. Most of the cultivators in the Divine Pill secret realm already knew that the army of evil spirits was coming, and that the powerful Rakshasa king was among them. Many of the cultivators were in a mess, and they didn't know what to do. However, the news that Zhuowen and the second elder brought not only about the army of evil spirits and the Rakshasa king, but also about the new exit. Some of the cultivators had already tried the 3 exits, but they were all guarded by a Rakshasa. Even if they managed to break through the Rakshasa's defense, the teleportation arrays at the 3 exits were all destroyed, and it was impossible for them to leave the Divine Pill secret realm. All of a sudden, most of the cultivators in the Divine Pill secret realm fell into a panic. The news about the exit brought by Zhuowen and the second elder was their last hope. They didn't care if it was true or not, but they chose to believe it because they had no other choice. Soon, Zhuowen and the second elder had gathered many cultivators, and they basically told these cultivators the location of the exit and asked them to wait there. As they kept moving towards the north, the distance between Zhuowen and the army of evil spirits was getting closer and closer. "Brother Zhuo, my Marshal Anne is nearby, and she seems to be severely injured," Yao Xiangjuan suddenly said. Zhuowen and the second elder stopped, and Zhuowen said in a deep voice, "Where is Palace Master Jingyan now? I can sense Marshal Anne's aura. She is nearby," Yao Xiangjuan said with uncertainty. Zhuowen nodded and floated in the air. He spread out his terrifying divine sense and carefully inspected everything around him. As she is there, Zhuowen stomped his right foot, and he landed in a remote valley. This valley was more like a crack in a mountain. It was very narrow and could only fit 3 people at most. In this crack, a woman with a veil was lying quietly. "Martial Ant," Yao Xiangjuan quickly said. Perhaps she heard Yao Xiangjuan's voice. The woman struggled for a while and finally woke up. "Xiangjuan, that's great. You're still here." Palace Master Jingyun's face was pale, but there was a smile on her face. Yao Xiangjuan blamed herself a little. She knew that she was the reason why Palace Mistress Jingyun became like this. Palace Master Jingyun must have heard about what had happened to her from Zhu Ruwei. Then, out of concern, she went to look for Luo Sha King. In this divine pill secret realm, only the Rakshasa King could seriously injure an expert like Palace Master Jingyun. In order to escape from Rakshasa King's evil clutches, Palace Master Jingyun had used her strongest move, 100 Flower Thistle. Although she had escaped from Rakshasa King's evil clutches, the side effects of this move had worsened her injuries. Before she fainted, Palace Mistress Jingyun hid in this remote mountain crevice. She only woke up when Yao Xiangjuan found her. "Zhuowen, hurry up and leave. The evil spirit army is coming." The second elder's urgent voice suddenly rang out. At that moment, the second elder was floating above the mountain peak. His face was pale and bloodless. He saw the countless densely packed black dots in the north. He knew that they were all the evil spirit army. Their numbers were simply beyond his expectations, especially the Rakshasa King that was following behind the evil spirit army. It gave the second elder a strong sense of crisis. Zhuo nodded and immediately hugged Palace Mistress Jingyun, who was hiding in a mountain crevice. He could see that Palace Mistress Jingyun's injuries were very serious. It would be difficult for her to even move now. "Don't touch me," Palace Mistress Jingyun suddenly spoke up. Her cheeks under the veil were flushed red. She had cultivated for countless years, but she had never had any physical contact with a man. Now that Zhuowen had come forward to hug her, she naturally rejected him subconsciously. Even though she knew that this was a special situation, she was still not used to it. "Now is not the time for you. If you don't want to die, don't talk nonsense." Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to Palace Mistress Jingyun. Now that the situation was so critical, how could he care so much? He hugged Palace Mistress Jingyun's delicate body. Palace Mistress Jingyun looked very voluptuous, but she was very light. Zhuowen hugged her as if he was hugging a feather. The moment Zhuowen hugged Palace Mistress Jingyun, Zhuowen could clearly feel her delicate body trembling. Zhuowen thought that Palace Mistress Jingyun would fiercely scold him. Who knew that she would just curl up in his arms and close her eyes without saying a word? "Zhuowen, hurry up and leave." The second elder's urgent voice rang out again. "Dang, dang, human, I didn't think that you would dare to appear in front of me. Today I will kill you." A furious roar rang out, followed by an earth-shaking tremor. The Rakshasa King, who was on his back, saw Zhuowen and suddenly sped up, rushing toward him. The moment Zhuowen hugged Palace Mistress Jingyun, he summoned the space-time wheel. After everyone entered the space-time wheel, he immediately activated it. Just as the Rakshasa King arrived, the space-time wheel turned into a stream of light and disappeared. Obviously, the Rakshasa King did not plan to give up. It chased after him step by step. Unfortunately, the space-time wheel had the enhancement of the space-time hollow space, so the Rakshasa King was still shaken off. Despicable human. When Zhuowen's space-time wheel completely disappeared, the Rakshasa King stopped and his eyes were filled with rage. "Speed up." The Rakshasa King looked at the army of evil spirits behind him and shouted coldly. Those evil spirits were all terrified, and their speed increased by a lot. The southernmost part of the divine pill secret realm was an extremely flat green plain. Occasionally, there were a few sparse hills standing there, and it looked quite peaceful. At this moment, there were thousands of cultivators gathered in this plain, densely packed together. However, The atmosphere among this group of cultivators was extremely unusual. All of them were lifeless and filled with despair. There were at least tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of cultivators who entered the divine pill secret realm this time. However, there were only a few thousand cultivators left. It could be seen that most of the cultivators were killed by the army of evil spirits. He's here. The second elder is here. We're saved. When the space-time will stopped in this plane, all of the cultivators looked at the second elder on the space-time wheel with fervent eyes. A group of people gathered below the space-time wheel and asked where the exit was. Everyone, don't panic. The exit is here. However, it might take some time, so don't panic. The second elder said loudly. As soon as the second elder said that, the people below immediately quieted down. Second elder, how long will it take for the additional exit to open? Juan asked. The second elder nodded and said, actually, the exit needs to be opened at the junction of the two. The original 3 exits were all at the junction, so it was easier to open them. However, this place is a bit far from the junction, so it's not that easy. Moreover, we need to rely on alchemy fire. How long will it take? Juan asked. It should take about half an hour, the second elder said. Juan frowned. He didn't expect it to take so long to open the additional exit. However, he didn't have time to think about it. He could only ask the second elder to open the exit now. Chapter 24-28. An army approaches after the second elder put away the pill fire. His gaze became much more cautious. He did not waste any time and rushed to the center of the plane with the pill fire in his hand. At this moment, the pill fire still looked lazy. If it were not for the black-clothed Juan's order, the pill fire would not even want to leave his side. The second elder formed hand seals with both hands at an extremely fast speed. His hands turned into shadows in the air. As the second elder continuously formed hand seals, the pill fire in front of him surged and turned into a terrifying flame tide that rushed into the sky. The terrifying flame emitted a terrifying heat, causing many of the surrounding cultivators to feel uncomfortable. However, the discomfort quickly disappeared. It was obvious that the second elder had done it on purpose. The second elder sat cross-legged in the flame tide. His hands were still forming hand seals and hand seals. The flame tide also surged and became even more terrifying. Juan looked at the flame tide that rushed into the sky. He knew that the second elder planned to use the pill fire to completely open the exit to the outside world. This place was the closest to the border, so the success rate was the highest. As time passed, 2/3 of the 1 hour that the second elder said had passed. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, dense and chaotic footsteps came from the north like thunder, attracting the attention of all the cultivators on the plane. The moment everyone looked at the end of the plane, fear appeared on their faces. At the end of the plane, a black mass of evil spirits was surging over like a black cloud pressing down on the ground. In the terrifying evil spirit army, a figure that was hundreds of meters tall strode over aggressively. This tall figure was none other than the Rakshasa King. No wonder I didn't see anyone anywhere else. It turns out that all of you answer here. It just so happens that you've given me a chance to catch all of you in one fell swoop. The Rakshasa King's eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty light. But soon, the Rakshasa King noticed the flame tide that rushed into the sky. His body could not help but freeze. His eyes instantly revealed a furious expression as he growled. Pill fire. It's actually a pill fire. I didn't expect to see a pill fire. Today, I'm going to destroy this pill fire. Perhaps it had sensed the Devil King's fury, but the wave of flames that soared into the sky also let out a shrill cry. It seemed as though it wanted to break free from the second elder's control and rush toward the Devil King. The second elder, who was sitting cross-legged on the fiery tide, had cold sweat dripping down his forehead. He quickly formed a seal with his hands and cursed in a low voice. What's going on? Why is this pill fire acting so strangely after encountering that Rakshasa King? Damn it, I can't control it anymore. The black-clothed Juon also noticed the abnormality of the alchemy fire. He took a step forward and placed his right hand on the flames, calming them down. The second elder let out a sigh of relief and looked at Zhuowen gratefully. Then he continued to seriously control the alchemy fire to open the exit. What should we do? Why hasn't the exit opened yet? The evil spirit army is about to arrive. It's over, it's over. With such a huge army of evil spirits, it's impossible for us to resist. In the crowd, uproars, clamors, and helplessness constantly intertwined. Everyone showed a look of despair at the same time. At this moment, Yao Xiangjuan supported Palace Master Jing Yun and stood in the middle of the crowd. Her beautiful eyes looked worriedly at the countless evil spirit army. Xiangjuan, let me go first. Palace Master Jing Yun struggled to get up, but Yao Xiangjuan held her down and said, Martial Ant, what are you doing? Your injuries are too serious now. Don't move. At this moment, Zhu Rui and more than a dozen other disciples of the Desire Palace surrounded Palace Master Jing Yun and advised her not to move with concern. Palace Master Jing Yun said calmly, Among this group of cultivators, my cultivation is the highest. Except for me, the others can't stop the Devil King at all. As long as I use 100 Flowers Thistle again, I can block the Devil King and the evil spirit army for a while. It's enough to buy time for the second elder to open the exit. Yao Xiangjuan shouted decisively, No, the price of 100 Flowers Thistle is too high. Martial Ant, you've already used it before. If you use it again, I'm afraid you'll hurt your origin. You may even lose your life. Absolutely not. Zhu Rui and the others also persuaded Palace Master Jing Yun. Palace Master Jing Yun shook her head and said, Xiangjuan, if I don't do it, everyone here will die. Although I'm not a lofty person, I know the pros and cons. Whether I do it or not, the result will be the same for me. But it's different for you. You can escape. Palace Master Jing Yun's voice was also heard by the others. The surrounding cultivators all looked guilty. Many of them also cupped their hands and thanked Palace Master Jing Yun. Palace Master Jing Yun looked coldly at the surrounding cultivators and said indifferently, You don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for you, but for the disciples of the Desire Palace. It has nothing to do with you. Once Palace Master Jing Yun said this, the surrounding cultivators fell silent again. However, no one refuted her. There are thousands of cultivators here, but most of them didn't have high cultivation. Although they were at the 8 steps Void Sky Realm, the gap between them and the Rakshasa King was too big. They didn't have the courage to fight against the Rakshasa King. The only one who could fight against the Rakshasa King was Palace Master Jing Yun, who was at the Life Enlightenment Realm. Originally, many cultivators wanted to ask Palace Master Jing Yun to do it. But now that Palace Master Jing Yun took the initiative, they fell silent. Yao Xiangjuan and the others still wanted to persuade her. Unfortunately, Palace Master Jing Yun had already made up her mind. It was useless for them to persuade her. Palace Master Jing Yun forcibly supported her delicate body and took out the 100 Flowers sword. She took a deep breath and looked at the countless evil spirit army and the huge Rakshasa King with a complicated expression. She revealed a trace of self-mockery. She didn't expect that she might die here today. Just as Palace Master Jing Yun was letting her imagination run wild, a large palm stretched out and grabbed her lily-white hand that was holding the 100 Flowers sword. Palace Master Jing Yun's delicate body trembled. She swung her lily-white hand and subconsciously wanted to shake off the large palm. However, she was too weak right now and couldn't shake it off. Can you still fight in your current state? A deep and hoarse voice sounded beside Palace Master Jing Yun. Palace Master Jing Yun frowned. Her divine sense had already detected that the owner of this large hand was Zhuowen. She subconsciously withdrew her lily-white hand. Her cheeks, under the veil, blushed a little. Ever since she started cultivating, Palace Master Jing Yun had never touched a man. However, this young man in front of her had touched her twice. Chapter 24-29. Fighting an army alone. Do you think there's another way? Palace Master Jing Yun asked coldly. Zhuowen nodded and said indifferently, Of course there is. What's that? Palace Master Jing Yun asked subconsciously. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the army of evil spirits in the distance. He said with a smile, "I'll pin down Rakshasa King. I'll also find a way to attract the attention of the army of evil spirits. You guys wait for an opportunity and leave as soon as the exit opens." As soon as Zhuowen said that, the cultivators in the surroundings were in an uproar. However, the uproar didn't last for long. Many cultivators had heard the rumor about Zhuowen killing Lu Haoyan, so they didn't raise any objections. "No, Zhuowen, you can't do it either. You'll die if you go there." Yao Xiangjuan was the first to object. Palace Master Jingyan also said subconsciously, "Yes, you can't do it either." However, Palace Master Jingyan seemed to realize that she had said something wrong. Her words were full of concern for Zhuowen, which made her blush, and she couldn't help but fall silent. Zhuowen didn't notice the inappropriateness in Palace Master Jingyan's words. He was very clear that if no one stepped forward to stop Rakshasa King and the army of evil spirits, then everyone here would suffer a calamity. Of course, Palace Master Jingyan was a life-enlightening realm expert and had the highest cultivation among all of them. Originally, she should have taken action. However, Palace Master Jingyan's injuries were too serious. Taking action now was simply courting death. Although Zhuowen's strength was inferior to Palace Master Jingyan's, Zhuowen's clone had already entered. The clone had survived 14 wind disasters and possessed the bloodline of the King Devourer. The clone's strength was even more terrifying than the main body. At the very least, the clone could still fight against a life-enlightening realm expert. This was also the reason why Zhuowen dared to face Rakshasa King. In addition, Zhuowen's main body also had the death energy that could restrain evil spirits and Rakshasa Kings. If he wanted to increase the power of the death chi, then he would have to kill creatures like evil spirits. Of course, this was only Zhuowen's secondary objective. His main objective was naturally to stop the Rakshasa King and the evil spirit army. It should be known that no matter how heaven-defying Zhuowen was, it would still be a little difficult for him to face the countless evil spirit army. He naturally had a mental struggle when he chose to face the evil spirit army alone. "Other than me, there's no one else to choose. You guys stay here, I'll go over." Zhuowen's voice was filled with an unquestionable tone. Then he took out the space-time wheel and stepped on it. He turned into a stream of light and disappeared. The plane was extremely vast. The cultivators were at the very end of the plane, while the army of evil spirits was at the very front. It would take at least half a day to traverse the entire plane, so Zhuowen planned to use the space-time wheel to reach the evil spirit army ahead of time. "Zhuowen!" Yao Xiangjuan stomped her foot and also planned to follow, but was stopped by Palace Master Jingyan. "Xiangjuan, don't be rash. Zhuowen is not an impulsive person, so he must have thought carefully before making this decision," Palace Master Jingyan said calmly. Yao Xiangjuan fell silent. Although Palace Master Jingyan was right, this time, Zhuowen's actions seemed to be impulsive in her opinion. "I hope Zhuowen can really stop the Rakshasa King." Zhu Rui murmured in a low voice, with a hint of worry in her beautiful eyes. Many cultivators in the crowd also sighed. Although Zhuowen stepped forward bravely, they were not too happy. After all, Zhuowen's strength was very strong, but there was still a gap between him and Palace Master Jingyan. As for the rumor that Zhuowen killed LV Haoyan, most of the cultivators here knew that Zhuowen killed with a borrowed knife, and there was an element of luck in it. But now, would Zhuowen have the same luck when facing the Rakshasa King as he did when facing LV Haoyan? It might be a little difficult. The space-time wheel speed was too fast. In less than 10 breaths, it had arrived in front of the evil spirit army. Zhuowen's original body, dressed in white, suddenly jumped out of the space-time wheel. The space-time wheel was stored in his spirit ring, and he landed on the flat ground. Dong! Dong! In front of Zhuowen, a dense crowd of evil spirits rushed madly, their eyes full of ferocity and greed. Zhuowen held the king's sword in his hand, which was covered with gray energy. It was the death chi. Perhaps it had sensed the aura of the evil spirits, but the gray energy seemed to be abnormally active. "You're courting death." Following behind the evil spirit army, the Rakshasa king naturally noticed Zhuan's figure standing in front of him, and the corner of his mouth revealed a mocking smile. The white-clothed young man in front of him used the candle of death to seal him again for the first time and save his prey from his hands for the second time. So the Rakshasa king's killing intent toward Zhuan was extremely strong. However, the Rakshasa king did not intend to take action now. Although he hated the white-clothed young man, Zhuan's cultivation was not high. There was no need for him to take action, as the evil spirit army could tear this arrogant guy to pieces. Boom, boom, boom. The evil spirit running at the front revealed a ferocious expression and suddenly jumped up. It actually jumped a distance of 100 meters and was the first to arrive in front of Zhuan. Roar! The evil spirit bared its fangs and brandished its claws. With a roar, its sharp claws tore through the air and suddenly blasted toward Zhuan's head. Just from the terrifying whistling sound set off by the sharp claws, it could be seen that this claw was enough to smash Zhuan's head into pieces. Zhuan sneered and raised the king's sword in his hand, slamming it onto the evil spirit's body. The strange thing was that the evil spirit's hard body immediately disintegrated and shattered into pieces the moment it came into contact with the king's sword. It's so powerful, Zhuan was stunned. He, who was holding the king's sword, felt it the most. He only casually swung it, but the moment it hit the evil spirit, it was as if he had hit the air without any hindrance. Obviously, the death aura's restraint on evil spirits was somewhat beyond Zhuan's expectations. Moreover, Zhuan also found that the moment the evil spirit died to the king's sword, there was immediately a gray aura that merged into the king's sword, imperceptibly strengthening the death aura's energy. Zhuan's small action did not attract the Rakshasa king's attention. The moment Zhuan killed the first evil spirit, countless evil spirits behind him swarmed over. The terrifying tide instantly covered Zhuan's entire body and drowned him. Looking at this scene, the smile on the corner of the Rakshasa king's mouth became even wider. He knew that Zhuan was dead for sure. Many cultivators on the other side of the plain were moved. Many of them smiled bitterly in their hearts, thinking that Zhuan was really putting on a brave front. He went to restrain the Rakshasa king alone. If he cannot even stop the evil spirit army, how could he restrain the Rakshasa king? Was he not courting death? Chapter 24:30. Although I am alone, I will press on. Bang, 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 bang. A terrifying power suddenly erupted from the frontmost encirclement of the evil spirit army. Following that, many evil spirits were sent flying like trash. Among the countless evil spirits that were sent flying, a figure in fluttering white clothes suddenly leapt out. He held an emperor's sword in his right hand, and his body was surrounded by 3 divine swords and a huge meteor hammer. These 4 divine artifacts were not ordinary. They were the Thunderfire Sword, Blood Immortal Sword, 9 Extinction Divine Rune Sword, and Sky-Destroying Meteor. They were all secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts. The 4 divine artifacts revolved around Zhuan, forming a powerful defensive barrier that blocked off the countless evil spirits that were charging at him. Moreover, Zhuan was even more powerful. Holding the Emperor's sword, he directly charged into the evil spirit army. The Emperor's sword in his hand was extremely fast, and only a faint afterimage of the Emperor's sword could be seen. Moreover, every time the Emperor's sword was swung, it could instantly blast all the evil spirits that it passed through into powder. Under the Emperor's sword, these evil spirits were as weak as tofu. Just like that, Zhuan, 1 man and 1 sword, shuttled through the evil spirit army as if he was entering an unstoppable state. All the evil spirits were basically unable to withstand a single strike from Zhuan's Emperor's sword. As for the attacks from the surrounding evil spirits, Zhuan simply ignored them. With the defense of the 4 secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, he basically did not need to take the initiative to defend. He only needed to focus on attacking. As a result, everyone was astonished to see this scene. Within the densely packed evil spirit army, a white-clothed figure went against the flow. Everywhere he went, the evil spirits were all killed and disappeared. And Zhuan's bold action naturally aroused the anger of countless evil spirits. Countless evil spirits leapt up and attacked Zhuan like rain. The evil spirits at the side did not let go of any openings and crowded around Zhuan from all directions. All of a sudden, the pressure on Zhuan became much greater. The four secondary heaven-cleaving divine artifacts were not airtight. As more and more evil spirits gathered, gaps would appear in the defenses. Then, the attacks of the evil spirits would land on Zhuan's body. However, Zhuan's body had been soaked in the blood of the true dragon. Although his body wasn't as tough as Devour King, it had reached Devour's level. Therefore, when the evil spirits attacked him, Zhuan didn't pay much attention to them. Although I am alone, I will go. Zhuan let out a long laugh. Amidst the countless evil spirits, he slaughtered them to the extreme. He also discovered that the death chi gathered in the king's sword was becoming stronger and stronger, more and more exuberant, as if something was awakening from the death chi. At the end of the plain, many cultivators could not help but feel their blood boiling when they saw this scene, especially when Zhuan said, "Even though I'm alone, I'll still go forward." The cultivators all felt guilty, as well as a surge of passion that they hadn't felt in a long time. "Even though I am alone, I will still go forward," Palace Master Jing Yun murmured in a low voice. Although her eyes were slightly closed, her divine sense was firmly fixed on Zhuan's body, especially when she discovered that this figure, who didn't look strong, had rushed into the army of evil spirits. Her heart was completely throbbing. What kind of man could have such breadth of mind and heart? Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuan's figure in a daze. Her beautiful eyes had long since turned misty, and she kept repeating Zhuan's words. The scene that happened today was something that this group of cultivators would never forget. It was too unforgettable. Rakshasa King's face was gloomy. He finally realized that something was wrong. His gaze was fixed on the king's sword in Zhuan's hand. To be more precise, he was staring at the gray energy that covered the surface of the king's sword. Death Chi. Rakshasa King finally recognized the true face of the gray energy, and he was shocked. He also knew that Death Chi was an energy that could restrain half-dead creatures like them, but it was very rare. Even in Death Valley, Death Chi had never appeared, but this white-clothed young man in front of him actually had this strange energy. Die. Rakshasa King attacked. He knew that no matter how many evil spirits there were, they couldn't do anything to Zhuan, who had Death Chi. Thus, he was the only one who could make a move. Moreover, Rakshasa King was also worried that the Death Chi on Zhuan's body would strengthen as he killed the evil spirits. At that time, it would reach a level that could threaten him. One must know that the Death Chi not only restrained evil spirits, but also the Rakshasa King himself. Of course, the Death Chi on Zhuan's body wasn't particularly strong at the moment, so it wasn't enough to threaten the Rakshasa King. However, as the Death Chi continued to strengthen, it would definitely reach a level that could threaten the Rakshasa King. Thus, the Rakshasa King would never let this happen. A huge palm the size of a small mountain descended from the sky and heavily smashed down in front of Zhuan. Countless strong winds swept up by the palm caused all the evil spirits within 100 miles to be torn into powder. Zhuan felt the terrifying strong winds and suddenly raised his head to look at the terrifying palm that was getting closer and closer. His elegant long hair suddenly fluttered behind him, but his gaze became extremely solemn. Zhuan's right hand tightened on the king's sword. Then he leaped up and slashed at the palm. Bang! The huge palm and the king's sword collided, causing the space within 1,000 miles to collapse. Due to the intense energy of the collision, the collapsed space was suffused with strange multicolored colors. Whoosh! A figure suddenly flew out, and the huge palm also stopped in midair, trembling violently. Zhuan suddenly twisted his waist and firmly stopped in midair with the help of the force from his waist. His gaze was extremely solemn as he looked at the huge palm in front of him, as well as the owner of the palm, the Rakshasa king. Zhuowen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He didn't feel depressed because he was repelled, but his gaze became brighter and brighter. Just now, when the king's sword stood on the Rakshasa king's palm, he clearly felt that the king's sword, which was covered with death chi, had indeed caused quite a lot of damage to the Rakshasa king's palm. Moreover, this was only because the death chi on his king's sword wasn't strong enough. If it was stronger, Zhuowen was confident that he could cut off the Rakshasa king's palm. The Rakshasa king's expression was rather ugly. He had also discovered the huge wound on his palm. Although the wound was not serious to him, he knew that the wound was not caused by Zhuowen's power, but the death aura's power. Thinking of this, the Rakshasa king's killing intent toward Zhuowen became even more terrifying. "Die for me again!" The Rakshasa king roared angrily and pulled out the huge bone sword on his back. He fiercely cut through the void and blasted it toward Zhuowen. The Rakshasa king, who was holding the bone sword, was much stronger than before. This attack was also far more terrifying than the previous palm. Seeing the Rakshasa king pull out the bone sword, Palace Master Jingya knew that things weren't good. Her face became extremely pale. Back then, she was forced to use the 100-flower thistle because of the Rakshasa king's bone sword. Only then was she able to block the Rakshasa king, who was holding the bone sword, and escape. However, she also suffered an extremely serious injury because of this. "Be careful, Zhuowen. You can't take this bone sword head-on." Palace Master Jing Yun completely let go of the restraint in her heart and shouted in Zhuowen's direction. Zhuowen stood silently on the spot and didn't move an inch. His appearance made Palace Master Jing Yun even more anxious. Many cultivators on the spot were also sweating for Zhuowen. Devouring King. Zhuowen stood against the wind. With a wave of his sleeve, the black-clothed Zhuowen slowly appeared beside him. Roar! Chapter 24:31. Bone soared the moment the black-clothed Zhuowen revealed his true body. Devouring King. Zhuowen's real body waved his sleeve, sending out the phagocytosis and handing it over to Devouring King. Due to the limitations of the body, the phagocytosis could only unleash its full power in the hands of Devouring King. Although Zhuowen's real body could also use the phagocytosis, he could only unleash less than 50% of its power. The phagocytosis flew along with the wind. While it was flying, it expanded to 100 zhang tall and landed in front of Devouring King. Devouring King's huge palm caught the phagocytosis in the center of his palm. Then, he threw it out, welcoming the huge bone sword that was falling from the sky. Rumble. A thunderous explosion resounded as the bone sword and the phagocytosis collided. The shockwaves created by the collision were like a storm exploding in the void. The clouds that had originally shrouded the sky all exploded the moment the ripples came into contact with them. They scattered one after another, exposing thousands of miles of blue sky. The evil spirits behind the Rakshasa king all showed fear. They stopped advancing and retreated instead, avoiding the terrifying shockwaves of energy. Rakshasa King's eyes shrank as he looked at Devouring King, who was glowing with golden light. Devouring King, although Rakshasa King was born in the Death Valley and was created by Di Danhua, he had never left the Divine Pellet's secret domain for so many years. However, when he was with Di Danhua, his knowledge wasn't short. Of course, he knew the famous king of the Devouring clan. Zhuowen, you actually have a clone with the Devouring King's bloodline? Isn't that too amazing? At this moment, the pill Emperor Turtle was floating beside Zhuowen. Looking at Devour King, whose body size was not inferior to Luosha King's, it exclaimed in surprise. Zhuowen didn't care about the pill Emperor Turtle's astonishment. He took a step forward with his right foot and charged into the army of evil spirits like a gust of wind. After knowing that the evil spirits could increase the power of the death chi, how could Zhuowen let go of such an opportunity? Although the army of evil spirits was huge, as long as Zhuowen defended well, he could enter and exit this terrifying army of evil spirits without any problems. Moreover, Rakshasa King was being held back by Devouring King. Zhuowen naturally didn't have any worries. Rakshasa King also noticed Zhuan's actions. His eyes were blazing with fire. After knowing that Zhuan had the death chi, the energy that he was afraid of, Rakshasa King really wanted to get rid of Zhuan as soon as possible. Luosha King snorted coldly. Her right wrist suddenly twisted, and the bone sword shot towards Devourer King in a tricky movement. Of course, Devouring King wasn't someone to be trifled with. The devouring seal in his hand was like the heavens were helping him. It released a terrifying power, blocking the bone sword in front of him. However, if one observed carefully, Devouring King was still at a disadvantage in the battle against Rakshasa King. This was because every time the bone sword and phagocytosis clashed, Devouring King would unconsciously take a few steps back while Rakshasa King wouldn't move an inch. Therefore, Rakshasa King was still stronger than Devouring King. Of course, this was all thanks to the Devourer King's powerful body. Although the Rakshasa King's bone sword was very powerful and a portion of the force would be transmitted to the Devourer King's body, the Devourer King's body was strong enough to withstand the force. If it had been an ordinary cultivator, Rakshasa King would have been seriously injured by these attacks. After Devouring King was forced to take a few steps back, Rakshasa King clenched the 5 fingers of his left hand into a fist and smashed Devouring King's shoulder. Bang! Clearly, Devouring King didn't expect Rakshasa King to have such a move. His shoulder exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Devouring King was also forced to retreat. Rakshasa King didn't chase after Devouring King. Instead, he changed his direction and rushed toward Zhuan's main body, who was still in the army of evil spirits. Zhuan, be careful behind you, Palace Master Jing Yun hastily reminded. Even without Palace Master Jing Yun's reminder, Zhuan already knew what was going on. After all, his senses were connected to the Devourer King's. The moment Luosha King repelled the Devourer King, he had already sensed that something was wrong. Human, I didn't expect you to have the help of such a powerful creature like Devouring King. However, this Devouring King is obviously not an adult yet. He's not my opponent at all. In my opinion, these tricks of yours are just petty tricks. In the face of absolute strength, petty tricks are just digging your own grave. Rakshasa King's cold voice resounded. Then, a huge palm descended from the sky and smashed toward Zhuan's head. Zhuan took a deep breath. His gaze was extremely cold. The king's sword in his hand spun around, and the terrifying death chi turned into a terrifying storm. In an instant, thousands of evil spirits in the surroundings dissipated in the death chi storm. Then, the death chi storm collided with Rakshasa King's palm. Bang! When the palm smashed into the death chi storm, it instantly cut off half of the storm. However, the storm was extremely tenacious. Although half of the storm was destroyed, the other half of the storm continued to grow and multiply, blocking the palm in midair. Moreover, the death chi's energy was indeed very effective against Rakshasa King. Zhuan could clearly feel that the place where Rakshasa King's palm came into contact with the death chi storm was withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Rakshasa King's face turned ugly. He had also noticed the terror of the death chi. He quickly retracted his palm. However, the moment he retracted his palm, the death chi storm followed him like maggots in a corpse. It chased after Rakshasa King's palm. Rakshasa King's gaze was gloomy. The bone sword in his right hand smashed into the death chi storm in front of him, instantly shattering the death chi storm that was chasing after him. At the same time, Rakshasa King quickly changed his sword stance. In an instant, he slashed out dozens of times in the death chi storm. Under the countless sword strikes, the huge death chi storm completely collapsed and was annihilated into nothingness. The moment the death chi storm dissipated, Zhuan also spat out a mouthful of blood due to the backlash. He retreated repeatedly and gloomily looked at the huge Rakshasa King in front of him. Rakshasa King's gaze was cold and emotionless. He pinched the bone sword in his hand and then suddenly swung it down. As if riding the wind and breaking the waves, it heavily smashed onto Zhuan's head. Not good. At the end of the plain, Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan, who were watching the battle, cried out in unison. The crowd behind them was in an uproar. Obviously, they could see the terrifying power of Rakshasa King's sword. They were worried that Zhuowen would not be able to block this sword without his death chi. It's over. Zhuowen's death chi has been broken. What should we do now? Rakshasa King's attack is too terrifying. I'm afraid that even a true life enlightenment stage powerhouse would have to pay a certain price to block this attack. Chapter 2432. Opening the exit, Zhuowen sighed softly. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a sparkling and translucent lotus flower from his spiritual ring. The lotus flower slowly floated above Zhuowen's head. Then, an endless energy burst out from the lotus flower. Rumble! The huge bone sword came one after another and heavily smashed onto the everlasting ice lotus. Then, the ground started to shake violently. 1/3 of the entire plain started to crack. A terrifying gale spread out in all directions between the Rakshasa King and Zhuowen. Puchi! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He grabbed the everlasting ice lotus and quickly fled. The Rakshasa King's pupils shrank as he looked at the fleeing Zhuowen. He never thought that this guy would be able to block his all-out attack. Just as the Rakshasa King was about to give chase, the Devourer King's roar came from behind him. Then, a terrifying sonic boom swept over. The Rakshasa King knew that the Devourer King was coming. Helpless, he could only turn around and deal with the Devourer King. At this moment, the Devourer King was extremely crazy. It was as though he was fighting with his life on the line. Zhuowen knew that this was the only way to restrain the Rakshasa King. Otherwise, the Rakshasa King would definitely take advantage of the time when the Devourer King was retreating to attack him. Zhuowen landed in the army of evil spirits. He held the everlasting ice lotus in his right hand. Mysterious life, divine energy revolved around his body. The Rakshasa King's attack just now had caused him quite a bit of injury. However, the mysterious life, divine power was extremely miraculous. It had actually drilled into his body and healed most of the injuries on his body. Although Zhuowen had landed in the army of evil spirits, the strange thing was that the ferocious evil spirits actually avoided Zhuowen. Not a single evil spirit dared to approach him. Pairs of eyes filled with fear were fixed on Zhuowen. To be more precise, they were staring at the king's sword in Zhuowen's hand. After Zhuowen displayed his invincible might, these evil spirits also realized how terrifying the deathly aura in Zhuowen's king's sword was. As long as their evil spirits came into contact with the death chi, they would immediately be annihilated. This death aura was the natural enemy and nemesis of evil spirits. Although evil spirits did not have much intelligence, they still had an innate fear. This was especially so when they faced the death chi, which was their natural enemy. If it were not for the presence of the Devil King, these evil spirits would have fled long ago. To be able to gather here in the face of the aura of death, it was clear that these evil spirits feared the Devil King more than the aura of death. However, even if these evil spirits were gathered here, they would lose their will to fight in the face of the death aura. Now, Zhuowen could be considered to have reached the point where he could enter a no-man's land among these evil spirits. Zhuowen shuttled through the evil spirits step by step. The speed at which he struck out with his sword was so fast that it dazzled the eyes. Every step he took, he was able to unleash tens of sword strikes. Every sword strike was able to wipe out tens of evil spirits. Seeing the evil spirits fall at Zhuowen's feet, many cultivators at the end of the plain were dumbfounded. They never thought that Zhuowen would be able to make such a reversal in the end. This Zhuowen really hid his strength well. That crystal clear ice lotus actually contained such powerful, mysterious life, divine energy. How did he obtain this mysterious life, divine energy? Palace Master Jingyan also calmed down. In her heart, she was even more curious and shocked about this Zhuowen. She now completely believed Yao Xiangjuan's evaluation of Zhuowen. Moreover, with Zhuowen's current performance, Yao Xiangjuan's evaluation back then could be considered to have underestimated him. Yao Xiangyuan was also completely relieved. In her heart, she was even more shocked than Palace Master Jingyan. At the entrance of the plain, on the peak of a tall mountain, a bloated figure leaned against the rock wall. He silently watched the countless evil spirit army and the Devourer King, who was fighting against the Devil King. Not simple at all. He actually has a clone of the Devourer King. Moreover, where did this brat obtain the Death Chi? I've never used it before. Ma Yujie crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Zhuowen, who seemed to be unstoppable in the evil spirit army, with a strange look in his eyes. Ever since Ma Yujie entered the Death Valley, he had followed the instructions of the Devil King and entered the underground of the Death Valley. Although there were many mechanisms under the Death Valley, Ma Yujie's array, Dao, was really strong. Therefore, the mechanisms under the Death Valley did not affect Ma Yujie too much. In the end, Ma Yujie found what he was looking for and left the Death Valley with satisfaction. Ma Yujie, who had left the Death Valley, naturally wanted to see what the Rakshasa King and the Evil Spirit Army were doing in the Divine Pill Secret Realm. Therefore, he followed the aura of the Evil Spirit Army and finally came to this plane. At the same time, Ma Yujie also saw Zhuowen's figure fighting alone. The Devil King's face was very ugly. Seeing the number of the Evil Spirit Army slowly decreasing under Zhuowen's Death Chi, while the Death Chi on Zhuowen's body was getting stronger and stronger, the Devil King felt a little anxious. Right now, he only wanted to get rid of Zhuowen's main body as soon as possible. Therefore, he did not hold back in the slightest when facing the Devourer King. Under the Devil King's all-out attack, the Devourer King was barely able to resist. However, the Devourer King's bloodline was too strong. He used the method of exchanging life for life to firmly entangle the Devil King. The Devil King also had a headache when facing the Devourer King. This Devourer King's combination with the phagocytosis was indeed very difficult to deal with. At the end of the plane, thousands of cultivators heaved a sigh of relief. They knew that Zhuowen had completely restrained the Devil King and the Evil Spirit Army. They were all saved. Everyone was extremely grateful to Zhuowen. Rumble. Suddenly, the flame tide that soared into the sky went against the flow and finally moved. A huge hole was blasted open in the sky by the flame tide. The inside of the hole was incomparably deep. The second elder, who was sitting cross-legged in the flame tide, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, the surrounding flame tide was completely retracted and turned into a formless alchemy fire. Second elder, is the exit open? The surrounding cultivators' eyes instantly fell on the second elder. They were all filled with anticipation. The second elder looked at the surrounding gazes and nodded. He pointed at the hole in the sky and said, "That hole is the exit. Everyone, hurry up and go in." "All right, where's Zhuowen?" As he spoke, the second elder looked around. However, he did not see Zhuowen's figure in the crowd. A strange look appeared in his eyes. Second elder, Lord Zhuo went to face the Evil Spirit Army and the Devil King alone. He bought us some time. The surrounding cultivators looked at each other. When they mentioned Zhuowen, their eyes were filled with reverence. Unknowingly, they started to address Zhuowen as Lord Zhuo. "What? Why didn't you stop him? Isn't that Zhuowen courting death? He actually faced the Evil Spirit Army and the Devil King alone?" The second elder was shocked and said anxiously, "Second elder, you don't have to worry. Lord Zhuo is very powerful. He really did pin down the Devil King and the Evil Spirit Army by himself." A female cultivator in the crowd said with admiration. The second elder looked at the crowd. Everyone was filled with reverence, but his heart was filled with doubt. He knew Zhuowen's strength very well. He did not think that Zhuowen could pin down the Evil Spirit Army and the Devil King alone. Chapter 2433, Immortal Sword Bones. The exit is open. Why aren't you leaving? The second elder asked in surprise when he realized that none of the cultivators had left through the exit. "We want to wait for Master Zhuo. This time, Master Zhuo has single-handedly held back the Evil Spirit Army and the Rakshasa King for us. If we leave first, we'll feel bad." The second elder smiled and said, You can leave first. Zhuowen is doing this so that everyone can leave this place. If you don't leave, you won't be accepting Zhuowen's kindness. If you're really grateful to Zhuowen, you can wait at the Pill Pagoda Square after you leave. Then, you can thank Zhuowen together. The others nodded when they heard the second elder's words. They felt that the second elder's words were reasonable. Then we won't be unreasonable. After we leave this place, we'll definitely thank Master Zhuo properly. A burly man with a full beard laughed in an extremely forthright manner. He cupped his fists towards the second elder and took the lead to rush into the hole. With the burly man taking the lead, the others also cupped their fists at the second elder and left the place. After a while, the thousands of cultivators had all left the place. The only ones who remained were the second elder, Palace Master Jingyun, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others. Palace Master Jingyun, why haven't you left yet? The second elder walked to Palace Master Jingyun and asked curiously. Palace Master Jingyun nodded at the second elder and said indifferently, I'll wait a little longer. The second elder did not say anything. He just looked at Zhuowen, who was still fighting in front of them, and sighed. Zhuowen is definitely the most talented junior I've ever seen. In the Six Desires Heavenly Domain, I've never seen such a brilliant genius like him. Palace Mistress Jingyun didn't retort. She just watched quietly. What the second elder said was true. Zhuowen's strength had long surpassed the younger generation. He was close to those old monsters who had cultivated for countless years. In their Six Desires Palace, except for the six palace masters, there was probably no one else who could suppress Zhuowen. Die! Zhuowen's white robe fluttered as he slashed out with the king's sword in his hand. Instantly, countless sword shadows formed into a terrifying wind. With him as the center, the wind spread out in all directions. Moreover, the wind was getting stronger and stronger. Wherever the sword shadow passed, the evil spirits were all turned into fine powder, annihilated into nothingness. At this moment, translation. 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 Translation, 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 translation is translation. Translation, 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 to translation death, to translation translation. Translation, as translation, 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 S translation, T translation, SS at this moment, the king's sword had completely turned gray. On the surface of the sword, complex and dense gray patterns were engraved. These were the energy of the death aura. It could be said that after the battle with the evil spirit, the king's sword had already become one with the death aura. These gray patterns were actually the manifestation of the death aura's energy. The fusion of the death chi made the emperor's sword's power surpass the secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact in one fell swoop. It was probably infinitely close to a Tao-proving divine artifact. Zhuowen felt that the king's sword was much stronger than the phagocytosis that Devourer King wielded. Moreover, the death aura was too effective against the Rakshasa King. It was much more effective against the Rakshasa King than phagocytosis. With that thought in mind, Zhuowen shifted his attention back to Rakshasa King, who was still fighting the Devourer King. At this moment, Rakshasa King was almost unharmed, but Devourer King was wounded in many places. Many of his scales were damaged, and cherry-red blood was flowing out. Clearly, the gap between Devouring King and Rakshasa King was not small. If it wasn't for Devouring King's powerful bloodline and terrifying physical body, he would have been defeated long ago. However, it was also because of Devouring King's powerful physical body that he was able to entangle Rakshasa King for so long. Rakshasa King's eyes were filled with impatience. The gap between him and Devouring King was huge. It was just that Devouring King relied on his phagocytosis and powerful physical body to entangle Rakshasa King for so long. However, Rakshasa King soon felt a strong sense of danger coming from behind him. Slash! A cold shout was heard. Then, Rakshasa King turned around and saw Zhuowen standing behind him. His white robe fluttered in the wind. Zhuowen slashed out with his king's sword, and the gray energy turned into a sword ray that was 100 zhang long. This sword ray was completely formed by the death aura, and it gave Rakshasa King a strong sense of danger. Rakshasa King roared and punched Devourer King with his left fist, sending him flying 100 meters away. Then, Rakshasa King grasped the hilt of the bone sword with his right hand and swung it up, slamming it against the sword ray. Bang! 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 The sword ray and the bone sword collided. Rakshasa King was shocked to find that the moment his bone sword came into contact with the sword ray, it was gradually dispersing. Rakshasa King kept retreating as he swung his bone sword. The powerful sword ray smashed against the sword ray, but it was like a clay ox entering the sea. Rakshasa King's heart sank. He knew that the death aura on Zhuowen's body was so strong that it could threaten his life. Just this sword ray alone was enough to put him in such a difficult situation. Whoosh! While Rakshasa King was busy dealing with the death aura sword ray, Devouring King took the opportunity to rush over. The phagocytosis in his hand smashed heavily on Rakshasa King's back. Rakshasa King put all his attention on the death aura. How could he expect Devouring King to launch a sneak attack? He was immediately hit by the phagocytosis. With a groan, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Bastard! Rakshasa King was enraged. He slashed out one last time, shattering the death aura sword ray. Then, he locked on a Devouring King. With a twist of his right hand, the bone sword started to spin. Immortal sword bone. Rakshasa King fell to the ground. Then he stabbed the bone sword into the ground with both hands. Instantly, countless bone spikes shot up from the ground, forming a terrifying forest of bones that wrapped around Devouring King. Devouring King couldn't dodge in time. Several bone spikes pierced into his body. However, he reacted quickly. He immediately unleashed the phagocytosis to protect his surroundings, barely blocking Rakshasa King's attack. Zhuowen's original body had an ugly expression. He no longer held back and released all the death aura he had collected. Suddenly, the tip of the king's sword emitted a gray energy. In an instant, his king's sword extended from 3 feet to dozens of feet long. Bang! 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 Zhuowen fell to the end of the forest of bones. Then, he quickly shuttled through the forest of bones. In an instant, he had shuttled from one end to the other. The king's sword in his hand danced rapidly. Chapter 24-34. The mysterious Ma-Yuge of the bone forest collapsed, and Devourer King was released. The moment Zhuowen rushed out of the bone forest, he swung the king's sword behind him. The king's sword turned into a gray light and disappeared in the blink of an eye, shooting toward Rakshasa King. Rakshasa King looked at the king's sword that was shooting toward him. His pupils shrank into needles, and his scalp went numb. Boom! Rakshasa King held the bone sword and slashed out, heavily slashing at the gray light that was about to reach him. Suddenly, a gust of wind whistled, blowing Rakshasa King's messy hair. Rakshasa King was shocked to find that the moment the king's sword landed on the bone sword, the gray death energy was like maggots in a tarsal bone, enveloping the entire bone sword. Rakshasa King hurriedly let go of the bone sword and retreated dozens of steps. He watched helplessly as his bone sword was gradually nibbled away by the death energy in front of him. Rakshasa King, every dog has its day. I didn't expect the death energy to restrain you so much. An indifferent voice sounded. Then, in the midst of the death energy, a figure rushed out like a windmill. Like a god, this figure rushed toward Rakshasa King. Rakshasa King took a closer look. This figure was none other than Zhuowen. The moment the death energy in the king's sword corroded the bone sword, Zhuowen had already arrived. Holding the king's sword in his right hand, he rushed toward Rakshasa King without slowing down. If it was any other time, Zhuowen would definitely not dare to face Rakshasa King directly. But now, he had such a large amount of death energy, and Rakshasa King was restrained by the death energy. He could only use 10% of his strength. Zhuowen was not afraid of the current Rakshasa King. Rakshasa King's gaze was gloomy. Then, under Zhuowen's astonished gaze, he turned around and fled. Zhuowen hadn't expected Rakshasa King to actually run away. One had to know that Rakshasa King's initial impression of Rakshasa King was simply lofty. Now that Rakshasa King had run away, the lofty impression that Rakshasa King had left Zhuowen was instantly shattered. One had to admit that Rakshasa King's speed was very fast. In just an instant, he was already 1,000 miles away. Zhuowen snorted coldly. How could he let Rakshasa King go so easily? Zhuowen waved his sleeve and summoned the space-time wheel. He stepped onto it and activated the space-time wheel. In an instant, Zhuowen turned into a stream of light and caught up with Luosha King. Clang! The sound of a sword cutting through the air could be heard. The Rakshasa King, who had been fleeing in front, took a deep breath and turned around abruptly. His right fist punched toward Zhuowen's chest without warning. Zhuowen had not expected the Rakshasa King to suddenly attack. For a moment, the Rakshasa King took advantage of a gap and punched him in the chest. Pucci! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt as if his internal organs were being crushed. However, Zhuowen was also unyielding. He forcibly withstood this punch, and the Emperor's sword in his hand fiercely chopped down on the fist. The Emperor's sword passed through the fist without any hindrance and cut off the Rakshasa King's iron-like fist. Then, Zhuowen endured the pain in his body. He controlled the Emperor's sword with his powerful divine sense and suddenly chopped down on the Rakshasa King's head. The Rakshasa King did not seem to feel any pain. He simply ignored the fist that was chopped down. He rolled on the ground and barely dodged the Emperor's sword that was chopping down. However, the Emperor's sword's speed was still very fast. It still cut off the Rakshasa King's legs below the knees. The Rakshasa King's recovery ability was still very strong. However, he found that his legs and fists that were chopped off by the death aura could not be recovered in a short time. If he wanted to recover, he had to get rid of the death aura that entered his wounds. At this moment, the Rakshasa King was really afraid. He was not afraid of Zhuowen, but of the powerful death aura. As long as he touched the death aura, it could quickly erode his flesh and bones. Pucci! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood again and fell to the ground. His face was extremely pale. Zhuowen's cultivation base was only at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step. After taking a punch from the Rakshasa King, the vitality in his body was almost obliterated. Fortunately, Zhuowen had the Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence. After taking a few drops of it, his injuries were suppressed and did not continue to worsen. But even so, the injuries in his body were not optimistic. The Rakshasa King's attack contained a terrifying corpse poison. Even the Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence could not detoxify this corpse poison. It could only temporarily suppress it. Dying, Zhuowen looked at the Rakshasa King crawling in front of him. The killing intent in his eyes was extremely strong. Under the control of his divine sense, the Emperor's sword once again swept out and ruthlessly pierced the Rakshasa King's heart. The Rakshasa King's eyes revealed a look of despair. He knew that he was about to die under the Emperor's sword. But the Rakshasa King was really unwilling. He had just escaped, but he was going to die like this. Moreover, he was going to die in the hands of an ant of the Void Sky 7th step. There was too much unwillingness in his heart. However, just as the Emperor's sword was about to pierce the Rakshasa King's heart, a soul banner a few feet long appeared in front of the Rakshasa King and blocked the Emperor's sword. The Emperor's sword was bounced away. The soul banner instantly expanded to a size of 100 feet and sucked in the Rakshasa King's huge body. Then, The soul banner turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. It swept into an extremely high mountain at the entrance of the plain. Zhuowen raised his head and happened to meet Ma Yujia's eyes on the mountain peak. Ma Yujia gave Zhuowen a faint smile before disappearing from the mountain peak. Ma Yujia, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He frowned slightly. He was very surprised. Why did Ma Yujia want to save the Rakshasa king? Could it be that the Rakshasa king breaking the seal really has something to do with Ma Yujia? Zhuowen's gaze became serious. He remembered that when he was at the altar in the center of the Death Valley, he saw Ma Yujia appear outside the Candle of Death. Although Ma Yujia had tried to break the seal and failed in the end, Zhuowen had felt that something was wrong. As for what exactly was wrong, he hadn't been able to tell at that time. Now, Zhuowen had figured it out. Ma Yujia's goal was probably not to break the seal. At that time, Ma Yujia's real goal was to awaken the Rakshasa king and then cooperate with him to break the seal of the Candle of Death. Thinking of this, Zhuowen bitterly smiled. He was even more afraid of Ma Yujia in his heart. "Zhuowen, are you okay?" An old voice sounded. Then, several figures rushed over from behind. The one in the lead was the second elder in a gray robe. The second elder rushed to Zhuowen's side. He immediately took out a divine elixir and handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at the divine elixir and found that it was a level 9 divine elixir. He couldn't help but feel that the second elder was really generous. He pushed the divine elixir back to the second elder. He had a lot of divine elixirs on him. Moreover, he also had the fusion divine elixirs refined by the pill Emperor Turtle. Many of them were more powerful than the divine elixir that the second elder took out. Chapter 2435. Blood Soul Carriage. Seeing the second elder's confused expression, Zhuowen explained, "Second elder, my injuries are not serious. The main problem is that I was poisoned by the Rakshasa king's corpse poison. This corpse poison is not something that can be cured by a divine pill. I have to force it out myself." Hearing this, the second elder finally understood and said awkwardly, "I was too rash." "Zhuowen, are you all right?" Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan also arrived and asked at the same time. However, Palace Master Jingyun's tone was cold. On the contrary, Yao Xiangjuan's voice was filled with concern. Zhuowen smiled and said, "I'm fine." The Rakshasa king was. Palace Master Jingyun was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "Yes, it was taken away by someone I know." Zhuowen said coldly. Palace Master Jingyun nodded. Since Zhuowen had said so much, he probably didn't want to reveal this person's identity. Otherwise, he would definitely reveal this person's identity. Since that person was able to save the Rakshasa king, he shouldn't be weak. However, the Rakshasa king is not that easy to tame. In the end, he might harm others and himself. Palace Master Jingyun said. Zhuowen nodded slightly. Palace Master Jingyun was reminding him that if he were to meet that person in the future, it would be best to completely eliminate the Rakshasa king. Now, let's leave this place first and seal the seal. Then, we will seal the exit. I think the person who saved the Luo Sha king has already saved the Luo Sha king, so he should be prepared to be locked in this divine pill secret realm by us. The second elder said indifferently. Zhuowen and the others did not have any objections. However, Zhuowen was worried that the divine pill secret realm might not be able to trap Ma Yujia. One should know that Ma Yujia was a level 9 divine array master. He had never seen through Ma Yujia's true strength. However, Zhuowen did not say it out loud. After Zhuowen, the second elder, and the others left the hole, it slowly closed and finally disappeared from the plain. When the hole disappeared, a figure appeared on the plains that had been turned into ruins due to the great battle. Ma Yujia silently looked at the closed hole with a smile on his face. Then, he waved his sleeve and took out the soul banner. The soul banner stood in the wind and turned into a huge cloth that covered the sky. A huge figure fell from the soul banner. It was the Rakshasa king who was missing both of his legs. "It's you. Why did you save me?" The Rakshasa king looked at Ma Yujia and asked. "You don't need to pretend," Ma Yujia said with his hands behind his back. The The Rakshasa king's eyes turned gloomy as he said coldly, "You want me to be your servant? Sorry, even if I choose death, I will not choose to become someone else's servant." Mayuja nodded, not surprised by Rakshasa king's answer. As the king of Death Valley, Rakshasa king was naturally arrogant. Even its creator, the Emperor Pill Fire, refused to submit. How could it submit to him so easily? However, Mayuja had enough patience. He was as Yasfawan was. Although the Rakshasa king's strength was only around the life enlightenment realm, he knew that the Rakshasa king's true strength was in the life and death realm. It was just that it had been sealed for too long and its strength had fallen. As long as the Rakshasa king was given enough resources, it would not be difficult for it to recover to its peak. Mayuja naturally valued the Rakshasa king's strength at its peak. Moreover, the Rakshasa king was stronger than ordinary life and death realm experts. If he could successfully subdue it, Mayuja would undoubtedly have an extremely powerful fighter. Then I'll slowly think about it in the candle of death. I have plenty of time anyway. Mayuja sneered and waved his sleeve. Immediately, 9,999 candle of death formed a ring and enveloped the Rakshasa king. Then, a terrifying black flame covered the Rakshasa king's body. The Rakshasa king's eyes were filled with pain. The candle of death's flame was the same as the death aura. However, the Rakshasa king did not beg for mercy. Instead, it stared at Mayuja with hatred. Mayuja smiled faintly. He did not care about the Rakshasa king's hatred. With a wave of his sleeve, the Rakshasa king, who was enveloped by the candle of death, was sent back into the soul banner. It would not be easy to make the Rakshasa king submit. Therefore, Mayuja planned to let this guy suffer a little to rub off his arrogance. When the time came, he would let him out and enlighten him. The exit is not the only way to leave the divine Pill secret realm. There are other ways. Mayuja muttered in a low voice. Then, he took out a rusty blood saber from his spirit ring. This blood saber did not have a hilt or a scabbard. It only had a body full of cracks. It looked like a broken piece of junk. Of course, if one looked carefully, the blood-red color on the surface of the saber was as clear as a blood-red diamond. If it were not for the numerous cracks on the saber, it could be called a piece of art. It was extremely gorgeous. Traceless blood, oh traceless blood. They say that one cannot leave a mark on their target. In the end, all of them end up with a body full of cracks. Even the blood-soul carriage has become like this. How ironic. Mayuja looked at the hiltless blood saber in his hand. The corner of his mouth was full of mockery. After saying that, Mayuja held the blood saber, which looked like it would shatter at any moment, and gently slashed it in the air. The originally ordinary blood saber suddenly emitted a terrifying Taoist rhyme. This Taoist rhyme was much more powerful than the 4 Taoist rhymes on Zhuan's body. The terrifying Taoist rhyme accompanied the blood-red saber light as it soared into the sky. Suddenly, the sky of the divine Pill secret realm was dyed blood-red. The surviving creatures in the divine Pill secret realm could not help but look up at the sky. Looking at the sky that was dyed blood-red by the saber light, their eyes were filled with fear. There were even many creatures with low cultivation bases. The moment the saber light dyed the sky red, they all lay down on the ground, their bodies trembling. With one saber, everything knelt down, and the sky was torn apart. The terrifying saber light cut through the sky, instantly creating a huge crack in the sky. With just one saber strike, the second elder had to spend half an hour to open up the exit, which had taken him half an hour to open up using his alchemic fire. Moreover, the area and diameter of the exit created by the saber light were much larger than the one created by the second elder. It should be known that this saber light almost tore the entire sky of the divine Pill secret realm apart. From this, one could see how terrifying this saber light was. If Zhuan and the others were here, they would definitely be dumbfounded. After all, just a saber light had such terrifying power. What was the origin of this broken blood saber? There was no pride in Mayuja's eyes. The only thing that existed in the depths of his eyes was sadness. Then, He put away the blood saber, turned into a streamer, and disappeared into the crack in the sky. Chapter 2436. Arranging for the Pill Emperor Turtle. Master Joie, thank you for saving our lives. If it weren't for Master Joie, we would have died in the divine Pill's secret realm. On the square, thousands of cultivators respectfully cupped their hands and thanked Joie. Among them, a forthright man took off his spirit ring without hesitation and handed it to Joie, saying, Master Joie, from now on, you are my great benefactor. Although my spirit ring doesn't have many valuable things, it is everything I have. Take it as my gift of thanks. Seeing this man's action, the crowd also took off their spirit rings and offered them to Joie. Joie was stunned, and with a wave of his sleeve, he returned the spirit rings to the cultivators and said, Everyone, there is no need to be so polite. This is actually what I should do. If I didn't step forward at that time, we would all have suffered. I was actually saving myself. Everyone can't help but feel guilty. Seeing Joie return the spirit rings, the cultivators on the square all showed their respect. If some of them were just thanking Joie for the sake of formalities, now they were sincerely thanking him. After Joie sent off the cultivators who thanked him, Palace Master Jing Yun brought Yao Xiangjuan and the others to Joie. Joie, I also want to thank you. Palace Master Jing Yun looked at Joie seriously. Joie smiled, then looked at Palace Master Jing Yun and the others and said, Are you planning to leave the Pill Furnace Star Field? Yao Xiangjuan nodded and said, Yes, my master needs me and Martial Uncle to go back for an important matter, so we can't stay here for long. Joie, you have saved me and Martial Uncle many times, so we are really grateful. As she spoke, Yao Xiangjuan hesitated for a moment before she said, If you don't mind, why don't you come with us to the Six Desires Palace? You've saved us many times, yet we don't have anything to repay you. Joie frowned. He wanted to go to the Six Desires Palace to take a look. After all, he wanted to find clues about Moyin of Wushang. However, Yao Xiangjuan and Palace Master Jing Yin knew many of his secrets. He was afraid that he would be walking into a trap if he went to the Six Desires Palace. Palace Master Jing Yun was more experienced. She immediately noticed Join's abnormality and said with a smile, Saving a life is like giving birth to a parent. Join, I will not mention your matter to anyone in the Six Desires Palace. Furthermore, I can see that your cultivation has reached the peak of Void Sky 7th step. Our Six Desires Palace has the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Cultivators who soak in the Six Desires Heavenly Lake will be able to instantly reach perfection in their current realms and help them break through their current bottlenecks. It will also allow them to experience the scenes of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, improving their state of mind and cleansing their soul. When Join heard this, he was moved. From the serious expressions of Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan, he could tell that the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake that Palace Master Jing Yun mentioned was definitely something extraordinary. It's the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. I remember that your 6 Desires Palace's 6 Desires Heavenly Lake is not open to the public. Even the disciples of the 6 Desires Palace have to pass an extremely strict examination before they're qualified to enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake, right? The second elder, who was standing beside Join, said in surprise, Second elder, between my life and the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake, which do you think is more important? Palace Master Jing Yun asked indifferently. The second elder smiled embarrassedly and did not say anything else. I do plan to go to the 6 Desires Palace. However, I have some matters to attend to here. Can we leave together tomorrow? Zhuowen asked. Palace Master Jingyan nodded and said, Sure. If you want to go to the 6 Desires Palace, Zhuowen, we can wait for you until tomorrow. Zhuowen cupped his fists and thanked her. Then he followed the second elder up to the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. Only Zhuowen and the second elder were on the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. The black-clothed Zhuowen sat cross-legged beside the brazier again. The alchemy flame was lying lazily on the black-clothed Zhuowen's shoulder. Zhuo Xiaoyu, do you have something to tell me? The second elder looked at Zhuowen in confusion and asked. Just now, Zhuowen had sent him a message asking him to go to the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. He said that there was something important to discuss. Zhuowen took out a palm-sized cauldron from his chest. As soon as the cauldron was taken out, 4 tortoise legs and a tortoise head stretched out from the bottom of the cauldron. This is... The second elder's eyes were filled with confusion. However, he soon revealed a look of disbelief as if he had thought of something. Old man, what are you looking at? Have you never seen such a handsome tortoise before? The Pill Emperor Tortoise looked at the shocked second elder with disdain. You guessed right. This is the Pill Emperor Tortoise. This tortoise shell is the Pill Emperor Cauldron. I think the Pill Pagoda should have records of it, right? Zhuowen said indifferently. The second elder said excitedly, yes, the Pill Pagoda does have records of it. It is said that the Pill Emperor Cauldron is a magical cauldron that can refine Tao confirmation divine pills. The reason why the Pill Pagoda's ancestor set up the Pill Pagoda was because of the Pill Emperor Cauldron. After saying that, the second elder reached out to take the Pill Emperor Tortoise. However, he was almost bitten by the Pill Emperor Tortoise. Old man, who do you think you are? How dare you touch me? The Pill Emperor Tortoise said arrogantly. The second elder was not angry at all. He repeatedly said that he did not dare, but his mouth was smiling from ear to ear. It was no wonder that the second elder revealed such an expression. Others might not know about the Pill Emperor Cauldron, but as the second elder of the Pill Pagoda, he knew it very well. If he had the Pill Emperor Cauldron, the rise of the Pill Pagoda would be just around the corner. It was very likely that the Pill Pagoda would regain its former glory. Pill Emperor Tortoise. The Pill Pagoda is the place that guards the Pill Fire. The Pill Fire should have a great relationship with you. In addition, you don't have anything else to take out in the outside world. I think the Pill Pagoda is the best place for you to stay, Zhuowen said. The Pill Emperor Tortoise's eyes spun. His gaze fell on the Pill Fire from time to time, revealing an expression of interest. The second elder looked at the Pill Emperor Tortoise expectantly. He knew that whether or not the Pill Emperor Cauldron could stay in the Pill Pagoda depended on this tortoise's words. For the sake of the Pill Fire, it's not impossible for me to stay in this broken Pill Pagoda. However, I have a condition. That is, I must become the master of this Pill Pagoda. You have to listen to me in the future, the Pill Emperor Tortoise said magnanimously. Zhuowen frowned. This Pill Emperor Tortoise was too insatiable. He was afraid that the second elder would not agree. However, what made Zhuowen speechless was that the second elder immediately agreed as soon as the Pill Emperor Tortoise finished speaking. He looked a little like a lackey in the marketplace. The image of the second elder, who originally had a sage-like demeanor, instantly collapsed in Zhuowen's heart. Seeing your sincerity, this Lord Tortoise will reluctantly agree to it. In the future, you are not allowed to touch the Pill Fire. Only this Lord Tortoise can touch it. Do you understand? The Pill Emperor Tortoise intended to act pretentiously and touch the Pill Fire. Unfortunately, when the Pill Fire saw the Pill Emperor Tortoise approaching, it immediately spat out a mouthful of flames. The Pill Emperor Tortoise's face was covered in dust. Then, it lay down on the black-robed Zhuowen's shoulder and continued to lazily nap. Chapter 24:37. Heading to the 6 Desires Palace, seeing that the Pill Emperor Turtle had agreed to stay in the Pill Tower, the second elder was naturally overjoyed. He immediately looked at Zhuowen and said, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, your clone." As he spoke, the second elder pointed at the black-robed Zhuowen behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled and said, "I'm afraid that my clone will have to stay in your Pill Tower. After all, the storm is going to be even more terrifying. I'm afraid that I won't be able to leave the alchemic fire." The second elder heaved a sigh of relief. He was quite good at reading people's expressions. Naturally, he could tell that the alchemic fire was completely dependent on the black-robed Zhuowen. If Zhuowen decided to take the black-robed Zhuowen with him, the alchemic fire would have to follow him. However, the Pill Tower couldn't control the alchemic fire's will. Now that Zhuowen had promised to let his clones stay, the second elder knew that Zhuowen was giving him face. Thinking of this, the second elder cupped his hands and thanked Zhuowen gratefully. The next morning, the Pill Tower was much quieter than before. Due to the end of the divine Pill secret realm, many cultivators who came to the Pill Tower left the Pill Tower and the Pill Furnace Star Field one after another. In a huge square, Palace Master Jing Yun, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhu Rue, and the others were waiting quietly. After a while, two figures walked out of the Pill Tower. One of them was a slender, white-robed youth, while the other was a gray-robed old man. Zhuowen, second elder. Palace Master Jing Yun's voice was cold. Seeing the two of them come out, she nodded slightly and said. Zhuowen and the second elder also greeted Palace Master Jing Yun and the others. Then, Zhuowen was pulled into the group by Yao Xiangjuan. Palace Master Jing Yun, I heard that the life and death pill of the divine Pill secret realm has appeared, and Zhuo Xiaoyu obtained it. I believe that the Six Desires Palace is a righteous and upright sect, and they wouldn't do anything sneaky, right? The second elder suddenly said. Palace Master Jing Yun was stunned for a moment before she said solemnly, Second elder, Brother Zhuo, you too can rest assured. I'm willing to swear to the heavens that I won't tell anyone else about the life and death pill. Zhuowen, who was standing beside Yao Xiangjuan, finally felt relieved. What he was most afraid of when he went to the Six Desires Palace was that the life and death elixir on him would be exposed by Palace Master Jing Yun. At that time, the Six Desires Palace might target him and force him to hand over the life and death elixir. He had risked his life to obtain this life or death pill, so Zhuowen naturally wouldn't hand it over. Yesterday, Zhuowen had also studied the life and death pill and asked the Pill Emperor Turtle some questions. In the end, he came to the conclusion that the life and death pill wasn't suitable for Zhuowen at his current realm. If Zhuowen's cultivation reached the 9 steps void sky, the life and death pill would be extremely useful to him. He would be able to absorb the life and death chi inside and use it to comprehend the mysteries of the life and death realms. Of course, the life and death pill also contained the energy of the fusion of life and death. If used properly, it would be very useful to cultivators in the life and death realms. It could be said that the life and death pill was extremely mysterious and unfathomable. It was a supreme treasure that countless experts would fight over. Since Palace Master Jing Yun had made a promise, Zhuowen felt a lot more relieved. At this moment, Zhuowen had never felt such an urgent mood. He wanted to refine the life and death pill. However, he knew that his cultivation was too low. He had to cultivate to the 9 steps void sky first. Therefore, Zhuowen was now eager to increase his cultivation. This was also the main reason why Zhuowen took the initiative to follow Palace Master Jing Yun when she mentioned the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. By the way, Palace Master Jing Yun, I plan to use a fake name when I enter the 6 Desires Palace this time. I will also completely change my appearance and aura. I hope Palace Master can agree to this. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. It wasn't that Zhuowen didn't believe Palace Mistress Jing Yun. It was just that the people here weren't the only ones who knew about Zhuowen's life or death pill. Any cultivator who entered the divine pill secret realm knew about it. Although the cultivators who survived this time were all saved by Zhuowen, Zhuowen wasn't stupid enough to believe all of them. Therefore, he requested to change his name after entering the 6 Desires Palace. Palace Master Jing Yun was startled, but she immediately thought of Zhuowen's idea. She nodded and said, All right, what name do you plan to change to? Tell me first. When we enter the 6 Desires Palace, I will introduce you and dispel the other palace master's doubts. Just call me Long One. Zhuowen grinned and wiped his face with his right palm. His originally handsome and spirited appearance instantly turned pale and bloodless, as if he was an immature young man who had indulged in debauchery. Even the aura on his body was completely different from Zhuowen's original aura. Palace Master Jing Yun strangely looked at the young man whose aura and appearance had completely changed. With her cultivation, if she didn't look carefully and didn't know who Zhuowen was, she wouldn't be able to recognize that this person was Zhuowen. Moreover, Zhuowen's disguise technique was extremely brilliant. Even Palace Master Jing Yun found it difficult to find a big flaw. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He was even more impressed with his master, Tai Ching. Tai Ching had given him 5 divine abilities, and now he realized that each of them was not simple. This disguise technique was naturally one of the 5 divine abilities, Shapeless All Life. He had already cultivated Shapeless All Life to great success. After changing his appearance, even those who were familiar with him might not be able to recognize him. Long One, everything is ready. Let's go. Palace Master Jing Yun changed the way she addressed Zhuowen very quickly. After she called him by his new name, she took out a flying divine artifact that looked like a flower and took the lead to enter the upper deck. The dozen or so disciples of the Desire Palace also follow behind. Big brother Zhuowen, let's go in too. Yao Xiangjuan stood beside Zhuowen and said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and entered the flying divine artifact with Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui. After boarding the deck, Palace Master Jing Yun activated the flying divine artifact. With a whoosh, the flying divine artifact turned into a streamer and disappeared. Zhuowen stood on the deck and looked at the countless meteorites that were constantly being shaken off. His eyes revealed a strange look. The flying divine artifact of Palace Master Jing Yun naturally could not be compared with the space-time wheel, but it was much faster than ordinary flying divine artifacts. By the way, Palace Master Jing Yun, I still have something to ask. Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, Say it. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and said, In your 6 Desires Palace, is there really no disciple named Moyan Wushang? Zhuowen asked somewhat unwillingly. He had asked Yao Xiangjuan this question before, but Yao Xiangjuan had already firmly denied it. It was just that Zhuowen was not willing to give up. Palace Master Jing Yun simply replied, I have never heard of the name Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen was somewhat dejected. In his heart, he began to resent the black-clothed woman who took Moyan Wushang away. If he knew the whereabouts of the black-clothed woman, he would go to the ends of the earth to capture her. Chapter 2438. The 9th heaven. The distance between the Pill Furnace star field and the 6 Desires Palace was extremely far. It wasn't something that could be reached in a short time. On the way, Zhuowen swallowed all the first 10 fusion divine pills refined by the Pill Emperor Turtle, and his aura reached the peak of the Void Sky 7 steps. Logically speaking, Zhuowen should be able to break through the Void Sky 8 steps, but in fact he didn't. It's not that Zhuowen doesn't have enough resources, but that Zhuowen's comprehension realm is still not high enough. Only his comprehension realm has reached the Void Sky 8 steps, so with the abundant resources he has, it's more than enough for him to advance to the Void Sky 8 steps. Zhuowen estimated that if he wants to reach the Void Sky 8 steps with his comprehension realm, it will take him at least 100 years. After all, from the Void Sky 7 steps to the Void Sky 8 steps is a huge leap. If Zhuowen doesn't have a heaven-defying opportunity, it's basically impossible for him to break through in 100 years. The 6 Desires Heavenly Lake of the 6 Desires Palace gave Zhuowen an opportunity. Therefore, Zhuowen decided to enter the 6 Desires Palace despite knowing that it might be inappropriate. Moreover, he also believes in the character of Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen stopped cultivating when he realized that it would be futile even if he continued to cultivate. He opened a cabin door and went to the deck. He was lost in thought as he looked at the vast starry sky and the endless stars around him. For some reason, even though Zhuowen's cultivation has reached the Void Sky 7 steps, he still felt small and humble in this vast starry sky. The vast and boundless starry sky was like an unreachable mountain in front of him. He tried hard to climb to the peak, but he also found that his ability was insufficient. Moreover, Zhuowen also wondered if there really was no end to this vast and boundless starry sky. What are you thinking about? A cold voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Zhuowen's thoughts. Zhuowen turned his head, looked at Palace Master Jing Yun, who was leaning on the railing next to him, and said with a smile, "I'm just wondering." Palace Master Jing Yun showed a surprised look, then immediately chuckled and said, "What are you wondering?" "I'm wondering what kind of existence this vast starry sky is. Do you think it's possible for us cultivators to transcend the shackles of the starry sky?" Zhuowen asked solemnly. Palace Master Jing Yun was silent for a moment. Then she suddenly chuckled and said, "We cultivators were born in this starry sky, and we will die in this starry sky. I have never heard of a true transcendence cultivator, but in the legends, heaven-breaking realm cultivators can truly transcend heaven and earth. Outside the starry sky, they're the true great freedom realm cultivators, those who have severed their own karma and reincarnation." That's only a legend. Have you ever seen a heaven-breaking realm expert? Zhuowen fell silent, then suddenly asked. Palace Master Jing Yun smiled bitterly and said, "You're right, that's indeed a legend. I've never seen a heaven-breaking tier elite, and I've never even seen a Tao-confirming elite. But forget it, it's useless for you to know about this now." Suddenly, Jing Yun Palace Mistress realized that she had said something wrong, so she remained silent. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jing Yun seriously and said, "But what? If Palace Master has something to say, please feel free to say it." Palace Master Jing Yun shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "This matter is related to the secrets of the 8 heavens. Only the masters of the 8 heavens who control the heaven-breaking source know the details. I only know half of it, so there's no need to say it. Palace Master, I hope you can tell me. I really want to know." Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jing Yun seriously and said sincerely. Palace Master Jing Yun frowned slightly and sighed. "I only know the rough information. The Palace Master of the Will Desire Palace is the strongest Palace Master of the 6 Desires Palace, and the heaven-breaking source is in her hands. Only she knows the details." Zhuowen didn't say anything, but waited for Palace Master Jing Yun to continue. He knew that since Palace Master Jing Yun brought it up, she would definitely tell him. "I once heard that the 8 heavens are just a corner of the vast starry sky. Above the 8 heavens is the 9th heaven. There are many cultivators who have reached the 9th heaven, and there are even Tao-confirming powerhouses there. Moreover, the 9th heaven is the core of the starry sky. It's a place where the real powerhouses yearn for." Speaking of this, Palace Master Jing Yun hesitated for a while and said, "About the 9th heaven, I only heard about it from hearsay. It's not necessarily true. You'd better not tell others about this matter, otherwise it will cause unnecessary trouble." Zhuowen cupped his fists and said gratefully, "Many thanks, Palace Master. Palace Master can rest assured about this matter. This Zhuowen won't gossip about it." Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and left the deck, but her cheeks were a little red. Palace Master Jing Yun knew that she didn't hear about the 9th heaven from hearsay, but from the Palace Master of the Will Desire Palace. Originally, she didn't even mention this matter to her disciple, but today, seeing Zhuowen so emotional, she suddenly became soft-hearted and told him about the 9th heaven. Even Palace Master Jing Yun herself felt that it was a little unbelievable that she would confide in a strange man. However, thinking that Zhuowen had saved her several times, Palace Master Jing Yun's heart felt a little better. She muttered in her heart that this was an act of repaying his kindness. The 9th heaven. Zhuowen was still leaning on the deck, but his eyes flashed with a sharp light. He didn't doubt Palace Master Jing Yun's words. He knew that Palace Master Jing Yun didn't need to lie to him about this. Originally, Zhuowen was still very confused about the starry sky, especially after the incident in the divine pill mystic realm and the bloodstained cliff. He had always been brooding about the fact that there were no Tao-confirming powerhouses in the 8 heavens. But now, Palace Master Jing Yun's words enlightened him. He knew that it's not that there are no Tao-confirming powerhouses in this starry sky. It's just that they are not in the 8 heavens, but in the mysterious 9th heaven. Thinking of this, Zhuowen became more and more curious about the ninth heaven mentioned by Palace Master Jingyun. It's just that Zhuowen still has self-awareness. The ninth heaven should be very mysterious, and there must be restrictions on entering it. Otherwise, the lords of the eight heavens would have left the eight heavens long ago to seek better development in the ninth heaven. Thinking of this, Zhuowen also knew that his current strength is still too low. Only when his strength is on par with the lords of the eight heavens will he be qualified to know the real secrets of the eight heavens. At that time, the mysterious veil of the ninth heaven will be unveiled by him. Half a year later, the flower-like flying divine artifact finally stopped. Zhuowen heard the movement in the cabin, opened the hatch, and walked out. On the deck, Palace Master Jingyun, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhu Rui, and the others had already gathered. Seeing Zhuowen coming out, Yao Xiangjuan greeted him with a smile. "Brother Zhuowen, we are here." Zhuowen nodded and immediately reminded her. "Miss Yao, my name is Longwen now. I hope you won't expose me." Yao Xiangjuan's cheeks blushed. She rolled her eyes at Zhuowen and had to change her words. "Brother Long, I was wrong just now." Chapter 2439. The familiar sound of a zither, a gigantic star field appeared in the starry sky ahead. This star field was much larger and more majestic than the pill furnace star field. The dazzling starlight was even more dazzling than lightning, and it covered every corner of the star field. This star region was even much larger and grander than the grand clarity immortal domain that Zhuowen had seen all those years ago. Even if Zhuowen was experienced and knowledgeable, he still revealed a trace of a dumbstruck expression when he saw this star region for the first time. This is the Six Desires star field, the core area of the Six Desires heavenly domain. It is also the residence of my Six Desires palace. Palace Master Jingyun noticed Zhuowen, who was in a daze, and a proud smile appeared on her face. The Six Desires palace is still in the Six Desires star field. Let's continue forward. After saying that, Palace Lord Jingyun continued to drive the flying divine artifact and flew towards the interior of the star field. Soon, they landed in a huge cluster of buildings in the core of the star field. This cluster of buildings was directly suspended in the starry sky. Colorful clouds floated below the buildings as if these clouds were supporting the buildings. Among the buildings, the most eye-catching and the tallest were the six palaces. These six palaces stood out among the countless buildings like cranes in a flock of chickens. At the top of the six palaces were engraved the word desire, 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 desire. Zhuowen knew that these six palaces should be the palaces of the six palace lords of the Six Desires Palace. Palace Lord Jingyun was the master of the Desire Palace, so she arrived at the Desire Palace first. Outside the Desire Palace, there were two stern-looking guards. These two guards were also disciples of the Desire Palace who had lost their vision. The two guards obviously recognized Palace Lord Jingyun and hurriedly knelt on the ground to greet her. They said respectfully, "Welcome back, Palace Lord." Palace Lord Jingyun put away the flying divine artifact and ignored the two guards. She directly led Zhuowen and the others into the Desire Palace. "Chunro, arrange a room for Zhuowen first. Xiangjuan and I need to go to the Desire Palace first." After giving the order, Palace Lord Jingyun hurriedly left the Desire Palace with Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen looked puzzled. Palace Lord Jingyun seemed to be in a hurry. It seemed that there was indeed an urgent matter this time. "Brother Long, I'll take my leave first. If you need anything, you can look for me at the Desire Palace. I'm a disciple of the Desire Palace." Zhu Rui smiled at Zhuowen and left the Desire Palace. "Brother Long, come with me. I'll arrange a room for you." The female disciple called Chunro said respectfully to Zhuowen. Chunro was one of the female disciples by Palace Master Jingyun's side. Although Zhuowen didn't have much contact with her, he knew that Chunro's character was very good. Furthermore, she was very grateful to Zhuowen for saving them. After agreeing, Chunro arranged for Zhuowen to stay in a good room. After Chunro respectfully left, Zhuowen sat on the bed and quietly thought about what to do next. His main purpose in staying in the Six Desires heavenly realm was to find Moyan Wushang. Since Moyan Wushang wasn't in the Six Desires palace, Zhuowen didn't plan to stay here for long. After he used the Six Desires heavenly lake and smoothly advanced to the 8 steps void sky, he would bid farewell to Palace Lord Jingyun and leave the Six Desires palace. After a while, the gentle sound of a zither came faintly from outside the window. The zither sound carried a helpless and sorrowful tune. It made people feel like crying. The moment he heard the zither sound, Zhuowen jumped up from the bed and immediately opened the door. He discovered that the zither sound came from outside the Desire Palace. At this moment, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with excitement. He was all too familiar with the tune because it was called a male phoenix courting a female phoenix. When Moyan Wushang parted with him, the last song he played for him was a male phoenix courting a female phoenix. Although Zhuowen had only heard it once, he had already firmly remembered it in his heart. Now that he heard it again, he immediately thought of Moyan Wushang. Wushang, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He followed the zither sound and rushed out of the Desire Palace. The guards outside the Desire Palace didn't stop Zhuowen. Previously, when Zhuowen came in with Palace Lord Jingyun, they clearly saw that he was an honored guest of Palace Lord Jingyun. The Six Desires Palace was extremely vast, and the zither sound came from the front of the Six Desires Palace. When Zhuowen arrived at the source of the sound, he discovered that the zither sound came from a large and beautiful garden. There were many exotic flowers and herbs planted in the garden. In the center of the garden stood an extremely gorgeous white jade pavilion. At this moment, a graceful woman in white was sitting cross-legged in the pavilion. On the stone table in front of her, there was a zither carved from 10,000 years old mahogany. The woman in white's slender hands slowly plucked the strings of the zither. The sad and melancholic sound of the zither was like flowing water, slowly sounding in the garden. Many figures had gathered around the pavilion, and they were all silently listening to the sorrowful sound of the zither. The moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on the woman in white, his brows suddenly wrinkled. This woman in white was completely different from the figure he had imagined. The woman in white had red lips and white teeth. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she gave people a feeling of calmness and elegance. Looking at the woman in white was like looking at a pure and flawless white lotus, giving people a comfortable feeling. However, the woman in white gave Zhuowen a strange feeling. It was the first time he had seen this woman, and he was sure that this woman was definitely not Moyan Wushang. However, the way this woman played the zither and the tune of a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix was exactly the same as Moyan Wushang's. This made Zhuowen have no choice but to overlap the two. What is going on? Zhuowen's eyes had a touch of disappointment. He slowly walked into the pavilion, silently listening to the tune of a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix, but he couldn't help but shed a tear. The scene of Moyan Wushang's departure, under the influence of a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix, all appeared in his mind, making Zhuowen have mixed feelings. When the tune of a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix gradually came to an end, Zhuowen had a strong impulse in his heart. He wanted to ask the woman in white in front of him where she learned this song. Thinking of this, Zhuowen suddenly jumped out and rushed to the top of the pavilion. The moment Zhuowen leaped out, an enchanting man below the pavilion twisted his slender waist as he also leaped onto the pavilion. Junior Sister Qilon, your zither sound is really getting more and more beautiful. I didn't notice it before, but now I know that you are really a musical genius. I can't help but cry when I hear this song. The enchanting man said as he sadly wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. His voice was full of sorrow. Chapter 2440. Clue. The woman in white stared blankly at the strange man in front of her. She did not expect this man to be so bold. Not only did he jump into the pavilion without any warning, but he also kicked the enchanting man away. Although the enchanting man's behavior was disgusting, his status in the Six Desires Palace was not low. He was the eldest disciple of the Incense Desire Palace. His name was Tan Kai, and he was an influential figure in the Six Desires Palace. However, the woman in white did not dare to underestimate the man who suddenly appeared in front of her. This man was not weak since he could kick Tan Kai away. Although Tan Kai was not on guard, he was not weak. Even if he was not on guard, it would not be so easy for others to kick him away. The crowd below the pavilion fell into a long silence. Their eyes shifted between Zhuowen, who was on the pavilion, and Tan Kai, who was standing awkwardly below. They were all trying to guess the identity of this strange man. It was the first time they had seen someone who dared to ignore Tan Kai in the Six Desires Palace. Even the woman in white who was playing the zither in the pavilion did not dare to confront Tan Kai. That was why she made such a big fuss. Whispers were constantly heard below the pavilion. Tan Kai, who was not far away, was so angry that his face turned green and white. His eyes were as gloomy as dark clouds. Where did this reckless guy come from? How dare you be so presumptuous here? You are courting death. Tan Kai snorted coldly and stomped his feet on the ground like a young girl in a fit of pique. If an ordinary beautiful girl did this, it would be pleasing to the eye. However, if it was a man like Tan Kai, it would make people feel nauseous and speechless. It seems that senior brother Tan Kai is really angry. This person is going to be unlucky. This person is also reckless. I don't know where this person came from. I have never seen this person before. The crowd below the pavilion was already used to Tan Kai's strange behavior. They did not feel that there was anything wrong with Tan Kai's actions. Instead, they were all talking about Zhuowen, who had appeared on the pavilion out of nowhere. Zhuowen didn't pay any attention to He Kai at all. Instead, he looked at the woman in white seriously and asked word by word, "Where did you learn this song?" The white-clothed woman's beautiful eyes were startled. She thought that the man in front of her was the same as Tan Kai, here to find fault with her. She didn't expect that he was only here to ask about the origin of the song she played. "Bastard, how dare you ignore me?" Behind him, when Tan Kai saw Zhuowen's indifferent appearance, he coldly snorted and directly attacked Zhuowen's back. A trace of impatience appeared in Zhuowen's eyes. He suddenly threw a punch behind him, colliding with Tan Kai's palm. Soon after, the fist and palm intertwined, and a terrifying gale swept out. Soon after, everyone was shocked to discover that Tan Kai had directly fallen with a miserable shriek, heavily smashing into the ground not far away. His figure was in a sorry state. Although Tan Kai's strength was not bad, his cultivation was only around the middle stage Void Sky 8th step. This kind of cultivation was really nothing much in Zhuowen's eyes. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step, his strength was completely capable of defeating cultivators below the Void Sky 9th step. The white-clothed woman looked at this scene in surprise. Then, she seriously sized up the unfamiliar man in front of her. On the surface, this man's cultivation was only at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step, but he was actually able to send Tan Kai flying so easily. This person's strength was not simple. As for the cultivators below the pavilion, they were all dumbstruck. Obviously, they did not expect Tan Kai to be defeated so easily. This was too fast. You bastard, I'm going to kill you, you bastard." Tan Kai let out a sharp scream and immediately took out the illusory heavenly bridge. Terrifying divine power surged out, looking extremely mighty and unyielding. Everyone below the pavilion revealed a look of fear. They knew that Tan Kai was truly angry. This time he was serious. Tan Kai, who had taken out the illusory heavenly bridge, did not care whether the garden's restrictions could withstand it or not. He suddenly rushed towards Zhuowen. The white-clothed woman's beautiful face changed slightly. She could not help but say, "Tan Kai, this is my garden. Do you want to destroy my garden?" At this moment, how could Tan Kai listen to the white-clothed woman's words? His mind was already filled with rage. Right now, he only wanted to teach the white-clothed youth a lesson and make this arrogant man kneel down and beg for mercy. However, before Tan Kai could even get close to the pavilion, A mountain-like black shadow suddenly descended above his head and ruthlessly pressed down on him. Tankai's expression changed greatly. He immediately took out the illusory heavenly bridge to block the black shadow. Unfortunately, the illusory heavenly bridge was sent flying by the black shadow, directly smashing Tankai into the soft soil under his feet. The others who had originally planned to leave the garden were all dumbstruck. They had originally thought that Tankai, who had used all his strength, would at least be able to fight a fierce battle with this unfamiliar man. However, the truth was like a ruthless slap to their faces. How was this the fierce battle they had anticipated? It was simply a crushing defeat. So noisy, Zhuowen said impatiently. Soon after, he looked at the white-clothed woman who was in a daze in front of him and said again, "You haven't answered me yet." The white-clothed woman looked at Zhuowen with fear and said in a deep voice, "I learned this song by myself. No one taught me." "Then you can't have learned this song for no reason. You must have heard it somewhere. Tell me." Zhuowen asked closely. The white-clothed woman frowned slightly and said coldly, "I can't tell you this. Where I learned this song has nothing to do with you, right? Could it be that you want to extort a confession from me by torture?" Zhuowen frowned slightly, but did not make a move. Instead, he cupped his hands and said apologetically, "Miss, I was impulsive just now. The reason why I acted like this was because the song you played was exactly the same as the one played by a very important friend of mine. So when I saw it, I thought of it." Seeing that Zhuowen's attitude had become modest, the white-clothed woman's expression eased a lot. She said lightly, "My friend, I really can't tell you the origin of this song. I once promised the player that this song would never be related to her. Even if someone asks, I won't tell you." Zhuowen nodded and did not continue to ask. Instead, he calmed down. Since he had heard, a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix in the Six Desires Palace, it meant that Moyan Wushang had probably been to the Six Desires Palace before. However, I can give you a reminder. The real player is still in the Six Desires Palace. However, I can't tell you where he is." As the white-clothed woman said this, she looked at Zhuowen with a trace of pity and sighed. Zhuowen also saw the trace of pity in the white-clothed woman's eyes. He felt a little strange. Obviously, he did not know why the white-clothed woman had such an expression. Chapter 2441. Qi Lanjuan wondered why Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan said they had never heard of Moyan Wushang. Change his name? Zhuowen quickly thought of the details. Moyan Wushang must have changed his name after joining the Six Desires Palace. That was why Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan said they had never heard of him. Zhuowen believed Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan. He knew that they had no reason to lie to him about Moyan Wushang. By the way, Tankai is the eldest disciple of the Fragrant Desire Palace. You better not mess around and let him out. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. The white-clothed woman looked at Tankai, who was suppressed by the phagocytosis and lying on the ground with only his head exposed, and said indifferently. Zhuo nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the devouring seal. Tankai, on the other hand, staggered out of the ground in a sorry state. He then looked at Zhuo Wan with fear in his eyes. The white-clothed youth in front of him looked young, but he was so strong. Tankai thought that Zhuowen was an old monster who came to the Six Desires Palace as a guest, so he was afraid of him. "Junior Qilan, I still have some things to do, so I will leave first." Tankai cupped his hands and said to Qilan. Qilan smiled and said, "Senior Tankai, if you have something to do, you can leave first. I won't see you off." Tankai didn't respond to Qilan's words, but hurriedly left the garden. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He was secretly vigilant against Tankai. Just now, he made such a big fool of Tankai. He was afraid that Tankai wouldn't let it go so easily. Qilan seemed to have read Zhuo Wen's mind and said with a smile, "Senior apprentice brother, don't worry. The Six Desires Palace doesn't forbid fighting. Sparring between each other can be found everywhere. If you lose to an enemy, as long as no one dies, the 6 great palace masters won't care. And I know Tan Kai's character. Although he is a little pretentious, he is also a person who can afford to lose. He will only go back and reflect, not think about how to deal with you. Zhuowen's eyes were strange. He didn't expect Qi Lan to say this. If what Qi Lan said was true, then his worries were indeed unnecessary. Moreover, after Tan Kai left, except for the fear in his eyes, there was no other emotion. Thinking of this, Zhuowen found that the atmosphere among the disciples of the 6 Desires Palace was good. At least, it was much better than the so-called 10 sects in the Great Brahma domain. By the way, this senior brother looks unfamiliar. I wonder which palace's disciple. At this moment, everyone else in the garden had left as well. Only Zhuowen and the white-clothed woman remained. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He sat opposite the white-clothed woman and said, "I am Long One. I am not from the 6 Desires Palace. I came with Palace Master Jingyun. My purpose is to use the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake to break through my current bottleneck." The white-clothed woman looked at Zhuowen strangely and said in a deep voice, "You were brought here by Marshal Aunt Jingyun, and you plan to use the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake? Is there a problem?" Zhuowen looked at the white-clothed woman in surprise and asked. The white-clothed woman shook her head and said, "The 6 Desires Heavenly Lake is a very important place in the 6 Desires Palace. Even the most outstanding disciple of the 6 Desires Palace may not be qualified to soak in the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. You are an outsider after all, so can I be guaranteed by Palace Master Jingyun?" Zhuowen had a bad feeling. This would have worked half a year ago. However, ever since the Palace Master of the Desire Palace came out of seclusion, the requirements have become extremely strict. Anyone who wants to enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake must pass the necessary tests. Otherwise, even the genius disciples of the 6 Desires Palace can forget about entering. As for the people recommended by the other palace masters, they basically have no chance, the white-clothed woman said. Zhuowen's face was a little ugly. He thought that he would definitely be able to enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake this time. He didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen. This was really an unexpected disaster. Thank you for your reminder. May I know your name? Zhuowen cupped his fists at the white-clothed woman. The white-clothed woman smiled and said, "My name is Qi Lan. I am the eldest disciple of the Desire Palace. I still have to thank Brother Long for appearing and driving away that annoying guy, Tan Kai." Zhuowen waved his hand. He didn't mean it. "By the way, can I have the honor of meeting the real person who played the song?" After chatting for a while, Zhuowen continued to ask. Qi Lan's pretty face froze. She immediately said seriously, "Brother Long, I see that you are a good person. I think it's best if you don't get involved in this matter. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. I won't tell you about the person who played the song. This matter is not only related to your safety, but also my safety. I hope Brother Long can forgive me." Zhuowen frowned. He began to realize that something was wrong. From Qi Lan's words, he could tell that the real person who played the song was in a bad situation. Although Zhuowen was very anxious, he didn't lose his calm. Since Qi Lan said it was so serious, it was obvious that things weren't so simple. Moreover, if he revealed too much of his emotions, he was afraid that Qi Lan would be suspicious. Although Qi Lan didn't seem to have a bad temperament, after all, this was the first time he and Qi Lan met. Naturally, he couldn't say too many important things. I was just curious. Since Miss Qi Lan can't say more, I won't ask anymore. This Long will take his leave first." Zhuowen cupped his fist toward Qi Lan, got up, and left. Qi Lan looked at Zhuowen's departing back, and her beautiful eyes revealed a strange look. After returning to the Desire Palace, Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan had already returned. However, both of them didn't look good. "Zhuowen, where did you go?" Palace Master Jingyun saw Zhuowen, and her complexion eased a little. "Oh, I went out for a stroll." "Palace Master, I saw that your complexion didn't look good. Could it be that something happened?" Zhuowen asked. Palace Master Jingyun sighed softly. Her face revealed a guilty look, but she didn't say anything. My master came out of seclusion, and he even made a bold and decisive move to reorganize the Six Desires Palace. Originally, Marshal An had already recommended you to my master to go to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, but my master, Yao Xiangjuan said with some difficulty. Zhuowen smiled slightly. He had already heard about this from Qilan, so he didn't blame Palace Master Jingyan. After all, the Six Desires Palace was still dominated by the Desire Palace. Zhuowen, I'm really sorry. Previously, I promised you that I would let you enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, but now I have to break my promise. Palace Master Jingyan said, with some embarrassment. Zhuowen smiled and said, It's okay. Since I can't enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, then forget it. I don't have to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Chapter 2442. Palace Master Wu Ju Test? What kind of test is it? Zhuowen had heard about the test from Qilan, but he didn't know what it was. Although he said it was fine, he still felt it was a pity to waste the chance to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. I'm not too sure about the test. It's hosted by the Palace Master of Desire. You'll know when you enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Palace Master Jingyan said. When will the Six Desires Heavenly Lake open? Zhuowen asked. Soon. There is only half a month left. When the time comes, I will take you to the Palace of Desire. Moreover, the other 5 palaces will also select several outstanding disciples to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake for the test. When the time comes, I will give one of the spots to you. Palace Master Jingyan said. Hearing this, Zhuowen cupped his fist and thanked Palace Master Jingyan. Thank you for your concern, Palace Master. For the next period of time, Zhuowen basically stayed in a room arranged by Palace Master Jingyan. At the same time, he occasionally went out to inquire about the song, A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix. But what made him helpless was that other than listening to a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix in Qilan's garden, he didn't have any other clues. Zhuowen also placed his hopes on the opening of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake in half a month. He believed that with Moyan Wushang's talent, he would definitely become the focus of attention in the Six Desires Palace. When the Six Desires Heavenly Lake opens, Moyan Wushang should also participate. At that time, he might be able to meet Moyan Wushang. Half a month later, the Six Desires Palace was very lively. Many disciples of the Six Desires Palace gathered in the huge square outside the Palace of Desire. They all knew that the entrance to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake was about to open. Although most of them didn't have the qualifications to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, there were geniuses representing their palaces. They were also here to cheer. I didn't expect the rules of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake to change. There's actually a test to enter. This time, each palace only has 2 spots. I think Senior Yao Xiangjuan and Senior Yun Maozhe from the Palace of Desire can pass the test. Senior Qilan from the Palace of Desire is not weak. She also has a good chance. Have you forgotten about Senior Tan Kai from the palace? He's also a very good competitor. Many disciples gathered outside the square of the Palace of Desire were excitedly discussing the test of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. There were also many disciples who regretted that they did not have the qualifications to participate in this test. They all wanted to work hard so that they could participate in this test in the future and enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake in one go. Time passed slowly amidst the discussions of many disciples. Soon, streams of light swept over from the other 5 palaces and appeared in the center of the square. 5 streams of light appeared in the middle of the square, attracting everyone's attention. These 5 streams of light were the disciples of the other 5 palaces who had obtained the quotas, excluding the Palace of Will. Zhuowen stood behind Palace Master Jingyan. Beside him was another female disciple of the Desire Palace. Her name was Yuan He, and she was the eldest disciple of the Desire Palace. Her cultivation was around the middle stage of the Void Sky 8th step. However, this Yuan He was quite fond of Zhuowen. His gaze towards Zhuowen was always filled with disdain and contempt. Zhuowen knew why Yuan He had such an expression. It was mainly because he an outsider, had snatched a quota from the Desire Palace. Moreover, his cultivation was only at the peak of the Void Sky, 7th step. Therefore, Yuan He was very unhappy with him. Other than Yuan He, there were a few other disciples of the Desire Palace who had reached the Void Sky, 8th step. However, Zhuan's arrival directly occupied one of the quotas. Yuan He, the eldest senior sister, was naturally unhappy with this outsider who had snatched the quotas of the other junior sisters. Zhuan was too lazy to pay attention to Yuan He's gaze. Instead, he looked at the other 4 palace masters with interest. Palace Master Jing Yun had already told him about the 6 palace masters of the 6 Desires Palace. Therefore, he basically knew the 4 palace masters. The 6 palace masters of the 6 Desires Palace were all women. At this moment, Zhuan's gaze fell on the fragrant Desire Palace. The palace master of the fragrant Desire Palace was called Xianglan. She was a charming young woman with an extremely hot figure. The reason why his gaze fell on the fragrant Desire Palace was because he saw an acquaintance there. One of the 2 people standing behind Palace Master Xianglan was naturally talkative. However, Zhuan found that the other person was actually his acquaintance, Zhu Rui. Zhu Rui had previously said that she was a disciple of the fragrant Desire Palace. However, her cultivation was not high and her talent was ordinary. It was basically impossible for her to be selected to participate in the test. Perhaps feeling Zhuan's gaze, Zhu Rui glanced at Zhuan and quickly lowered her head. There was a trace of helplessness in her eyes. On the contrary, it was Tan Kai who grinned and met Zhuowen's eyes without the slightest scruple. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Over the past half a month, Tan Kai had indeed not come looking for revenge. Zhuowen had thought that Tan Kai was as magnanimous as Qi Lan had said. However, he did not expect that this fellow had actually come looking for Zhu Rui. Obviously, Tan Kai knew that Zhu Rui had some relationship with him. Therefore, he forcibly called Zhu Rui to participate in the test. As for Zhuowen, he did not know what this guy was planning. In addition, he also saw Qi Lan in the Tingyu Palace team. When Zhuowen's gaze was cast, the latter smiled slightly and greeted him. Just as the disciples of the 5 major palaces were looking at each other, footsteps came from the Tingyu Palace. Immediately, 3 figures walked out. The person in the lead was a Taoist nun dressed in a flawless white robe, and her hair was tied up in a bun. The Taoist nun held a horsetail whisk in her hand. She was spotless, like a white lotus that appeared in front of everyone, giving them a refreshing feeling. Although the Taoist nun's appearance could only be regarded as ordinary, her temperament added an indescribable beauty to her. Many disciples in the square were stunned by her. This white-robed Taoist nun was the palace master of the Tingyu Palace, Wu Ju. Because she was in seclusion all year round and did not come out for a long time, most of the disciples of the 6 Desires Palace had never seen her. Now that they saw her, they were indeed stunned. Even Zhuowen felt his eyes light up the moment he saw the Taoist nun. Behind Wu Ju was a man and a woman. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. They were simply a pair of golden boy and jade girl. The beautiful woman was naturally not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. She was Yao Xiangjuan. As for the handsome man, Zhuowen had never seen him before. This handsome man wore a purple robe and had long hair that draped over his shoulders. He had a demonic temperament. It's senior brother Yun Maozhe. I haven't seen him for a long time. Senior brother Yun Maozhe is still so extraordinary and handsome. The moment this handsome man appeared, Zhuowen speechlessly heard many infatuated female cultivators around the plaza shouting extremely shameful names and words, causing Zhuowen to be extremely speechless in his heart. Chapter 2443. Desireless. Yun Maozhe still likes to be in the limelight. Tan Kai muttered to himself, looking a little unhappy. At this moment, Yun Maozhe's gaze landed on Yao Xiangjuan, who was beside him. He thought that his attire today would attract her attention, but he didn't expect that Yao Xiangjuan didn't even look at him. Instead, her beautiful eyes landed on Palace Master Jing Yun. Hmm? Yin Maozhe frowned slightly. Ever since Yao Xiangjuan came back, he felt strange. Back then, he and Yao Xiangjuan were the most outstanding disciples of the Desire Palace. Their relationship wasn't bad. Although they weren't Tao companions, they were quite close. Back then, the two of them were the golden boy and jade girl that the disciples of the Six Desires Palace thought would become Tao companions. However, ever since Yao Xiangjuan came back, she was cold to him. Usually, they would only speak a few words. Yin Maozhe followed Yao Xiangjuan's gaze and landed on Palace Master Jingyun's side. He immediately saw Zhuo standing behind Palace Master Jingyun in white. Yin Maozhe had heard about this white-clothed young man. It was said that this young man saved Palace Master Jingyun's life in the Divine Pill Secret Realm. In order to repay this young man, Palace Master Jingyun had suggested to Wu Ju to let this young man enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. However, Wu Ju rejected her. Now that this young man was here, it seemed like he wanted to let this young man participate in the test. It seems like Junior's sister has been bewitched by this little bastard. Yin Maozhe saw Yao Xiangjuan's gaze fall on Zhuowen from time to time. His face was a little gloomy, and his gaze towards Zhuowen was a little unfriendly. Zhuowen also noticed Yao Xiangjuan's gaze. He nodded at Yao Xiangjuan symbolically. Just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, he felt an unusual gaze. Then, he looked at Yin Maozhe's unfriendly gaze on the other side of Wu Ju. He revealed a pondering look. He could roughly guess why Yin Maozhe was hostile towards him. After Wu Ju arrived, the other 5 palace masters cupped their hands and greeted him. Wu Ju nodded and glanced at Zhuo, but he did not say anything. The 5 of you, I changed the rules of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake without permission. The 5 of you won't have any objections, right? Wu Ju said calmly. Although Wu Ju's words were for discussion, his tone was unquestionable. As long as it is a decision made by Palace Master Wu Ju, we will naturally not have any objections. Xiang Lan, the Palace Master of Xiang Desire Palace, said with a smile. The other Palace Masters also cupped their hands in acknowledgement. Although Palace Master Jingyun was a little dissatisfied, the current situation was irresistible, so she couldn't say anything. She only gave Zhuowen an apologetic look. Zhuowen smiled faintly, indicating that Palace Master Jingyun did not need to take it to heart. Since no one has any objections, I will cut to the chase. In the future, the qualifications to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake will be the same. Regardless of whether it is a disciple of the Six Desires Palace, an elder or a palace master, if you want to enter, you'll have to pass a test, Wu Ju said faintly. Palace Master Wu Ju, what is this test? Palace Master Jingyun could not help but ask. Wu Ju smiled and waved his sleeve. A slender figure slowly walked out from the dark door of the Yi Palace. This slender figure was graceful and graceful. Just by looking at her figure, one could tell that this woman was definitely a beautiful woman. It was a pity that this woman was not wearing a luxurious dress. Instead, she was wearing an old hemp garment. She was barefooted as she slowly walked out. The moment this woman finally appeared in front of everyone, the square suddenly quieted down. There were even some disciples who revealed a look of horror. Even Zhuowen frowned when he saw this woman who appeared from the door of the Yi Palace. He revealed a trace of horror. This woman in hemp garment had a slender figure and a perfect body. However, she did not have a face. Her face did not have any facial features. She did not have eyes, nose, mouth, or ears. She did not even have hair. Of course, if one looked carefully, this woman's eyes and mouth were sewn together with thin thread. Her nose and ears were cut off. However, the treatment was too seamless. Hence, at first glance, she looked like a faceless person. The moment Zhuowen saw this woman, a burst of anger appeared in his chest. Although he did not know this woman, it was too cruel to treat a woman like this. Palace Master Jingyun, how can your Six Desires Palace be so cruel to torture a woman like this? Zhuowen questioned Palace Master Jingyun coldly. Palace Master Jingyun frowned slightly. Before she could speak, Yuan He, who was behind her, retorted, "What an ignorant guy. You don't even know who this person is, and you dare to question the palace master. What right do you have to question the palace master? Let me tell you, this woman is a desireless one. In order to cultivate the desireless cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace, she cut off the feeling of six desires on her own in order to cultivate the desireless cultivation method to great success. You're really capable to use this to accuse the palace master. Yuan he jabbered on endlessly, ridiculing Zhuo Wen from top to bottom. Originally, Yuan he was already very unhappy that Zhuo Wen had snatched a spot in the Desire Palace. Now that she had the opportunity, she naturally would not let Zhuo Wen go. Yuan he, that's enough. This is Long Wen's first time in the Six Desires Palace, so it's reasonable that he doesn't know this. After Palace Master Jing Yun spoke, the chattering Yuan he could only shut up helplessly. However, she looked at Zhuo Wen with eyes full of dissatisfaction. Zhuo Wen could not be bothered with Yuan he. Instead, he looked at Palace Master Jing Yun, as if he was waiting for her explanation. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded at Zhuo Wen and said, Yuan he is right. She is indeed the second desireless one in countless years in the Six Desires Palace. She also cultivates the supreme cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace, the desireless cultivation method. What is her name? Why is she the second? For what you said, the desireless cultivation method is very powerful. Why don't the other cultivators of the Six Desires Palace cultivate this cultivation method? Zhuo Wen's expression softened as he asked curiously. You can also see that the cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace is divided according to the six desires of the seven emotions and six desires of the mortal world. For example, the cultivation method of the Desire Palace must be cut off from the desires before starting to cultivate. The same is true for the other five palaces. Among them, the cultivation method of the Desire Palace is the most powerful. Palace Master Jing Yun sighed softly and said, In fact, our Six Desires Palace has another cultivation method. This cultivation method is above the cultivation method of the other six palaces. It is the desireless cultivation method. The first generation ancestor who founded the Six Desires Palace cultivated the desireless cultivation method and became a desireless one. He finally succeeded in reaching the Tao realm and later left the eight heavens. Palace Master Jing Yun didn't say the following words. Zhuo Wen didn't need to think to know that the first generation Palace Master of the Six Desires Palace should have gone to the ninth heaven. Chapter 2444. Six Desires Hell. Your Six Desires Palace has been established for such a long time, yet this is the second desireless person to appear. Could it be that none of you can practice the desireless cultivation technique? Zhuo Wen asked doubtfully. Palace Master Jing Yun said in a self-deprecating manner, Long Wen, you might not know this, but the requirements to practice the desireless cultivation technique are very high. Many past palace masters have tried to practice the desireless cultivation technique, but after they severed their five senses, they died before they could even reach the entry level of the desireless cultivation technique. No one has ever succeeded in becoming a desireless person. You should know that if you want to become a desireless person, you must be able to practice the desireless cultivation technique. Otherwise, you'll be a cripple. In addition, not everyone has the courage to sever their five senses because that's really no different from being a cripple. Hearing this, Zhuo Wen's expression changed. Palace Master Jing Yun was right. How frightening was it to lose one's five senses? Without sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, one would lose any joy of being human. It was very frightening. Zhuo Wen only had to think about it to know how lonely that feeling was. Thinking of this, Zhuo Wen looked at desireless person with admiration. This person was willing to become a desireless person, so he must be a person with a firm will. What's the name of this desireless person? Zhuo Wen suddenly asked. She's called Wang Yin, and she was brought here by Palace Master Wu Jue. Speaking of which, this desireless person hasn't been in the Six Desires Palace for a long time, but he directly practiced the desireless cultivation technique. I really admire this, Palace Master Jing Yun said in admiration. Zhuo nodded but didn't ask much. Although he was shocked by this desireless person in the beginning, he felt much more at ease after hearing Palace Master Jing Yun's explanation. Palace Master Wujue, is the test related to desireless person? Palace Master Xianglan asked doubtfully. Palace Master Wujue said with a smile, yes, desireless person can summon the 6 desires hell. As long as he can persist in the 6 desires hell for half an incense stick's time, he will obtain the qualifications to enter the 6 desires heavenly lake. He can actually summon the 6 desires hell? This desireless person's cultivation speed is really fast. Palace Master Jing Yun said with her beautiful eyes narrowed. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jing Yun in confusion and asked, what is the 6 desires hell? Palace Lord Jing Yun calmed down and explained, the hell of 6 desires is a hell that deprives you of your 6 desires. Once you enter this hell, your 6 desires will be slowly stripped away. Moreover, the pain of deprivation is very real. This kind of pain isn't physical, it's on the level of the soul. This kind of pain is very difficult for ordinary people to endure. Not only Palace Master Jing Yun, but the other Palace Masters were also shocked, and their faces turned ugly. If the 5 Palace Masters don't have any objections, I'll have Desireless summon the 6 desires hell now. Although Palace Master Wujue still used the same inquiring tone, she didn't wait for the 5 Palace Masters to answer and formed a seal. The body of Desireless, who had walked out, trembled. Immediately after, he let out a sharp howl and extended his right hand. Kneeling on one knee, he slapped the ground with his right hand. Soon after, Zhuowen felt a terrifying and unknown power gushing out from the depths of the ground. Soon after, he noticed a shadow rising from the ground. This shadow had 6 steps. At the bottom of the steps, raging black flames were burning. There were also countless figures swaying and struggling unceasingly. It was as if the bottom of the steps was an endless and terrifying hell. This time, the 12 people who intend to enter the 6 desires heavenly lake must stay on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. All right, I have to remind you that the higher you go on the steps, the more painful it will be. It's best to act according to your capabilities. Palace Master Wujue said indifferently. Zhuowen's expression changed. He understood Palace Master Wujue's meaning. Her requirement was that they just had to stay on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, no matter which step they were on. Moreover, with Palace Master Wujue's reminder, the rest of the people would definitely stay on the last step. However, from Zhuowen's point of view, each step could only accommodate 2 people. In other words, only 2 people could stand on the last step. The rest of the people would be forced to enter the next step. Zhuowen knew that the 12 people would definitely have to fight in order to obtain the best position. However, Palace Master Wujue had already planned for this. The eyes of the 12 disciples standing behind their respective palace masters flickered. Clearly, they had guessed the hidden condition of Palace Master Wujue. Clearly, it wasn't as simple as staying on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Let's start now. Those who seize the first opportunity will have more opportunities. As for these opportunities, you'll have to fight for them yourselves. After Palace Master Wujue finished speaking, the 11 disciples standing behind the 6 great palace masters flew out and stepped onto the steps. Only Zhuowen was still standing behind Palace Master Jing Yun, not moving in the slightest. The other disciples surrounding the plaza immediately became noisy. They were all cheering for their senior brothers and sisters from their respective palaces. Look, did that brat from the Desire Palace turn stupid? He's actually not moving at all. Is he so scared that he can't even walk? Don't talk nonsense. That's not a disciple of the Desire Palace. It's said that he's an outsider. I don't know how he got in through the back door of the Desire Palace, but he got Palace Master Jing Yun to get him a place in the test. TSK, he's actually an opportunistic guy. He doesn't have the ability, but he still needs to rely on connections to make a fool of himself. Zhuowen, who was standing motionlessly beside Palace Master Jing Yun, immediately attracted the attention of many disciples around him. Following that, a series of mocking voices could be heard. As for those disciples who originally wanted to cheer for the Desire Palace, they all lowered their heads in shame. They felt that letting Zhuowen take the test on behalf of the Desire Palace was simply a disgrace. They also had no face to cheer for him. Longwen, you're not going to make a move? Palace Master Jingyun was surprised to see Zhuowen not moving. Zhuowen, however, said calmly, I'm really not interested in the fight between a group of juniors. I'll go up after they're done fighting. When Palace Master Jingyun heard this, she was a little speechless. She thought to herself, you're not that old, right? You actually called Yao Xiangjuan and the others juniors. With Palace Master Jingyun's cultivation and realm, she could naturally see that Zhuowen's bone age was not that old. He was even younger than any of the disciples present. It could be seen that this child's talent was too strong. However, Palace Master Jingyun was very clear about Zhuowen's strength. If Zhuowen rushed up now, none of the other 11 people would be a match for him. Even Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhe, who were the most favored, would not be a match for him. After all, in the eyes of Palace Master Jingyun, Zhuowen was an abnormal person who had defeated the Rakshasa King. Palace Master Jingyun, why is your candidate not moving at all? Is he afraid? Palace Master Fei Shan, who was closest to Palace Master Jingyun, looked at Zhuowen, who was standing behind Palace Master Jingyun with ill intentions, and said mockingly, Chapter 2445. Coward Palace Master Jing Yun couldn't be bothered with the doubts of the other palace masters. She stood there calmly and didn't urge Zhuowen, nor did she say anything. The other palace masters didn't say anything after being snubbed, but there was a mocking smile on their faces. Obviously, they despised the cowardly behavior of Long One, who was chosen by Palace Master Jingyun. Palace Master Wu Ju glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and didn't say anything. Instead, she turned to look at the situation on the Hell of Six Desires. At this moment, Yun Maozhe was the first to reach the stairs. He was the first to land on the first step. The aura on his body suddenly erupted. Obviously, he was showing off to the others. The other 10 people knew Yun Maozhe's strength. Therefore, when Yun Maozhe reached the first step, they consciously avoided him. Yao Xiangjuan's strength wasn't any weaker than Yun Maozhe's. However, in order to take care of Zhu Rui, she fell behind. Zhu Rui looked at Yao Xiangjuan anxiously and hurriedly said, Senior sister, don't worry about me. Otherwise, you won't have any good spots to choose from later. Yao Xiangjuan shook her head and said, Junior sister Zhu, although I don't know why your palace master wants you to participate in this test, if you rely on yourself, you won't be able to pass this test. In any case, we've gone through life and death together. Since you're with me, I naturally won't ignore you. Zhu Rui was touched and ashamed. She could only let Yao Xiangjuan lead her. The two women quickly reached the stairs of the Hell of Six Desires. Their speed wasn't fast. When they reached the stairs, there were already 4 people in front of them. Yun Maozhe naturally occupied the first step. He didn't even allow the other 3 to fight for the other half of the first step. He was extremely domineering. Although the other 3 were angry, they didn't attack Yun Maozhe. They knew very well that Yun Maozhe wasn't easy to deal with. Therefore, the 3 of them took a step back and fought for the 2 spots on the second step. Zhuowen was no stranger to these 3 people. They were Tan Kai from the Palace of Desire, Qilon from the Palace of Desire, and Yuan He from the Palace of Desire. The battle between the 3 of them was extremely intense. None of them were willing to back down. When Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui arrived in front of the stairs, Yun Maozhe smiled at Yao Xiangjuan and said, Junior sister Yao, I've already reserved this spot for you. You don't need to compete with them to avoid dirtying your hands. Yao Xiangjuan's long, shapely eyebrows slightly knitted as she looked at Yun Maozhe, whose gaze was blazing. She cupped her fists and said, Xiangjuan appreciates Senior Marshal Brother Yun's good intentions, but Junior Marshal Sister Zhu Rui and I need 2 spots, so Senior Marshal Brother Yun won't leave any for me. After saying that, Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui brushed past Yun Maozhe and headed for the 3rd platform. In the end, they occupied the third platform. Since the 12 of them had not chosen their positions, the power of the Hell of Six Desires had not been fully released. Therefore, the people on the stairs did not feel the power that deprived them of their 6 desires. Yun Maojia's face was gloomy. When he saw Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rue brushing past him, an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. However, he forcibly suppressed this anger. His unfriendly gaze fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away, who was still motionless. "He's just a coward," Yun Maojia said without the slightest hesitation. Although Yun Maojia's words were without rhyme or reason, many people present knew that the person Yun Maojia was talking about was none other than the white-clothed youth standing behind Palace Master Jingyan. Zhuowen glanced at Yun Maojia indifferently. In his heart, he drew a big cross for this guy. When he made his move later, he did not intend to show mercy to this guy. Bang! A miserable-looking figure fell from the second step outside. Everyone focused their eyes and realized that this miserable-looking figure was actually Yuan He from the Desire Palace. On the second platform, Tan Kai and Qi Lan looked down indifferently at the severely injured Yuan He. Soon after, they sat down cross-legged on the second platform, no longer paying attention to Yuan He, who looked dejected. The moment Yuan He was struck down, the fourth and fifth platforms were also snatched away by other disciples. In the end, only the sixth platform and the first platform beside Yun Maojia were left. Yuan He's beautiful eyes were filled with dejection. She knew very well that her injuries were not light. She was probably no match for any one of the 10 people on the steps right now. Try to snatch it from them was just asking to be humiliated. However, Yuan He was unwilling to go to the sixth platform just like that. She knew that the sixth platform was the closest to the Hell of Six Desires. When the Hell of Six Desires was activated, she would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. On the sixth platform, there was no need for half an incense stick to burn. Yuan He even thought that she would not be able to last 15 minutes. When she thought of this, Yuan He's beautiful eyes fell on Yun Maojia, who was on the first platform. She gritted her teeth and walked over to Yun Maojia. She cupped her hands in a rather humble manner and said, "Senior brother Yun, your position is also empty. Can you give it to me?" Yun Maojia glanced at Yuan He and smiled faintly. "Junior sister Yuan He, you're too courteous. If you want this position, what's wrong with giving it to you? It's just that I can't stand the other participant of the Palace of Desire. That fellow is standing there like an idiot. Do you think it's fair for you to fight here alone?" Yuan He's expression was slightly unsightly. She glanced at Zhuowen, who was still motionless behind her, and snorted coldly. "This person is an extremely cowardly coward. It's simply a waste for my palace master to give a spot to him. I don't expect this person to help me in any way." Yun Maojia smiled faintly and said, "Junior sister Yuan He, actually, this coward is not completely useless. Ask him to get his ass over here. As long as he kneels before me and begs me to give up this position, I'll immediately give it to you. What do you think?" Yuan He was stunned. Then, she cupped her fists and said rather happily, "Then, thank you very much, senior brother Yun." After saying that, Yuan He rushed over to Zhuowen's side. In Yuan He's opinion, this boy did not even dare to fight for a position, so he was definitely a complete coward. Asking this coward to kneel before Yun Maojia and beg for a position, this request was not excessive. And this coward could also be considered to have contributed to the Palace of Desire, so why not? So in Yuan He's heart, she felt that Zhuowen would definitely accept this proposal. Zhuowen had long heard the conversation between Yuan He and Yun Maojia. He sneered repeatedly in his heart. But when Yuan He came before him, he still asked knowingly, "Senior sister Yuan He, why didn't you go and snatch it? Why did you come back again? Do you want to be a coward like me?" Yuan He's face froze, revealing an angry look, and she snorted coldly. "Do you think I'm you? What a good-for-nothing fellow. Now, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Now, go over and kneel before Yun Maojia and beg for position by his side. You just have to do that." Palace Master Jing Yun stood on the spot and did not stop her. She was clear that Zhuowen had his own sense of propriety when dealing with matters, and there was no need for her to worry. Instead, Yuanhe's performance disappointed her slightly, but she did not point it out. "All right, I'll go over right now." Out of Yuanhe's expectations, Zhuowen agreed very readily, and then he brushed past Yuanhe and walked over. Chapter 2446. Yin Maozhe was furious. Although the conversation between Zhuowen and Yuan he wasn't loud, it wasn't soft either. At least, all the disciples in the square heard it. Soon after, the disciples in the plaza roared with laughter as they looked mockingly at Zhuowen, who had finally taken a step forward. The rest of the palace masters also had strange looks on their faces as they looked at the indifferent palace master Jing Yun in confusion. They were also flabbergasted. Why would Palace Master Jing Yun give a precious spot to this foreign cultivator in front of them? They could naturally detect the aura on Zhuowen's body. He was at the peak of the void sky 7th step. This kind of cultivation wasn't weak, and there was a gap between him and the great disciples of the 6 palaces. Of course, in their opinion, even if there was a gap, there was no need to be a coward. Therefore, they looked down on Zhuowen. Yuanhe looked at Zhuowen's back and was stunned at first. Then, he sneered and followed. On the stairs above the 6 Desires Hell, the 10 disciples who had chosen their seats looked at Zhuowen with different expressions. Among the 10 people, except for Tan Kai, Qilan, Yao Xiangjuan, and Zhu Rue, who looked serious and strange, the others looked disdainful and contemptuous. Zhuowen's behavior just now had already made them think of him as a coward. The smile on Yun Maozhe's face grew wider and wider, and the disdain in his eyes grew stronger. Tan Kai, who was sitting one step behind Yun Maozhe, sneered in his heart and thought to himself, "This Yun Maozhe really thinks that he's invincible among the younger generation. He's going to suffer soon." Not long ago, Tan Kai suffered a great loss at Zhuowen's hands. This made him realize how terrifying this white-clothed youth's strength was. Yun Maozhe was one of the 2 strongest disciples of the 6 Desires Palace. His cultivation was around the peak of the void sky 8th step, and he looked down on all the younger disciples of the 6 Desires Palace. Tan Kai knew that Yun Maozhe was very strong, but after being defeated by Zhuowen, he changed his mind. He had personally experienced the despair he felt when facing Zhuowen. It was much stronger than Yun Maozhe's. The reason why he had such a feeling was because he knew that the white-clothed youth in front of him was much stronger than him. He had already surpassed Yun Maozhe. Qilan and Yun Maozhe had similar thoughts. After all, Zhuowen had casually defeated Tan Kai in her garden. He was even more clear than Tan Kai about how formidable and terrifying Zhuowen was. Zhuowen stopped more than 10 meters away from Yun Maozhe and looked at him silently. "I've heard Palace Lord Jingyan mention you before. You're called Long One, right? I say, Long One, look at your senior sister from the Desire Palace. She didn't even manage to grab a spot. You're also a member of the Desire Palace for the time being. Shouldn't you help your senior sister?" The mocking smile on Yun Maozhe's lips deepened as he continued. "There's one more seat beside me. Even if it's empty, it's still empty. It's not impossible to give it up. If you kneel down and beg me, this seat will belong to your Desire Palace. You or your senior sister can sit here as you please." Zhuowen looked at Yun Maozhe silently. He knew that the reason why the latter targeted him from the beginning was probably because of Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen felt a familiar gaze fall on him. He immediately raised his head and saw Yao Xiangjuan sitting on the 3rd step looking at him apologetically. Zhuowen smiled slightly, indicating that the latter didn't need to care. This small detail between Zhuowen and Yao Xiangjuan was naturally caught by the sensitive Yun Maozhe. Jealousy burned in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. "Longwen, what are you still standing there for? Why don't you do as senior brother Yun says? Do you want me to invite you?" Behind him, Yuanhe's unfriendly voice sounded. His tone was full of urging and disdain. Zhuowen ignored Yuanhe's urging behind him. Instead, he looked at Yun Maozhe indifferently and said with a smile, "Senior brother Yun, there are 2 of us here. I'm afraid one seat isn't enough, right? Yin Maozhe was taken aback. Soon after, he sneered and said, "You still want 2 seats?" Yuani came to Zhuowen's side first and said coldly, "Long one, why would a coward like you need a seat? If you also want one, go to the 6th step. There's another seat there. I prefer this first step, so I don't plan to go to the 6th step." Zhuowen said indifferently. Yin Maozhe's face darkened. He sneered and said, "You mean you plan to snatch my seat? That's right. If senior brother Yin doesn't want to get hurt, you should give up this seat. Otherwise, you'll be embarrassed later." Zhuowen said, as if nothing had happened. Yuan was stunned on the spot. Zhuowen, who was only a coward in her eyes, actually said such gutsy words at this moment. She couldn't react for a moment. Haha, what a joke. Yin Maozhe grinned. In his heart, he felt that Zhuowen was definitely courting death. Just as he was about to open his mouth to refute, a gust of wind suddenly swept over. The terrifying power caused Yin Maozhe's pupils to shrink. Bang! Yin Maozhe punched out without thinking. The terrifying fist wind spread out like a storm. Then, he groaned and retreated from the first step, landing below. The moment Yin Maozhe landed, a figure brushed past him and stood where Yin Maozhe was just now. "Senior brother Yin, you're too polite. Since you've given up this seat, I won't be polite." An indifferent voice slowly sounded, finally breaking the surrounding silence. Yin Maozhe looked at his trembling right fist, then looked in shock at the white-clothed youth who was already standing on the first step. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Just now, it was this white-clothed youth who attacked with a palm, and he casually punched out. The two of them exchanged a blow, and he was blasted out. Yin Maozhe could still feel the intense pain coming from his right fist. At this moment, Yin Maozhe was really shocked. How could a guy who he thought was just a coward have such powerful strength when he made a move? Although he didn't use his full strength just now, to be able to injure him, this person was definitely not simple. Yuanhe's beautiful eyes were stunned. She looked at Zhuowen, who was already standing on the first step, and then looked at Yin Maozhe, who was blasted off the step by Zhuowen. For a moment, her mind couldn't wrap itself around the situation. The surrounding disciples were also stunned. Evidently, this sudden turn of events had caught them off guard. The 6 palace masters were more or less surprised. Among them, Palace Master Wuzhe looked at the calm and composed Palace Master Jingyun, and a thoughtful look appeared in her beautiful eyes. "Bastard, I don't know what kind of despicable method he used. It seems that I have to get serious." Chapter 2447. Hellfire Zhuowen shook his head inwardly. This Yin Maozhe really cared about his face. He was clearly the one who was blasted down by Zhuowen. Yet he said that Zhuowen had used despicable means. "Senior brother Long, be careful. This is Yin Maozhe's natal artifact, Cloud Vanishing. Its power is extraordinary. What's even more strange is that when he uses this artifact, Yin Maozhe's figure becomes erratic and is very difficult to deal with." The moment Yin Maozhe attacked, Qi Lan, who was on the 2nd step, warned Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded, but did not care. Although Yin Maozhe's strength was not bad, the gap between them was not small, so he really did not put Yin Maozhe in his eyes. Whoosh! Yin Maozhe's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he arrived in front of Zhuowen. Then, a cloud of smoke wrapped around Zhuowen, making it impossible for Zhuowen to see Yin Maozhe's figure clearly. Amidst the dense clouds, Yin Maozhe's figure drifted about like a ghost. Zhuowen stood in the cloud and looked at the surrounding cloud. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. This cloud was quite powerful. Not only could it block his vision, it could even affect his divine sense. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was not an ordinary 7th-step Void Sky cultivator. His divine sense was even more terrifying than a 9th-step, half-step Void Sky cultivator. Although this cloud could restrain divine sense, it didn't have much of an effect on Zhuowen's divine sense. Zhuowen could even clearly see Yin Maozhe's exact location. Of course, if it was any other cultivator at the 8th step, their divine sense would be completely useless. They would be like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, passively waiting for Yun Maozhe to harvest them. However, Zhuowen was different. Yun Maozhe's whereabouts were now completely exposed to his divine sense. At this moment, Yun Maozhe was hiding in the clouds and was secretly delighted. He thought to himself, "This guy is probably out of his wits right now, isn't he? I'll let you stay in the clouds for a while longer and let you feel this feeling of confusion." Yun Maozhe couldn't help but laugh out loud. However, his expression soon changed. He saw that the cloud of smoke in front of him was suddenly blasted away by a large hand. Then, this large hand of energy unceremoniously grabbed at him. "Bastard, how did this guy know my location?" Yun Maozhe's expression changed greatly, but now was not the time for him to be shocked. That large energy hand had already completely covered him, and he could only passively reach it. Yun Maozhe's spear blasted out, instantly blasting out countless spear shadows in midair. He wanted to rely on these spear shadows to annihilate this energy hand. Unfortunately, this energy hand was too terrifying. The moment it touched the spear shadows were completely destroyed. Then, it ruthlessly smashed onto Yun Maozhe's body. Yun Maozhe was shocked and could only raise his long spear to block this terrifying big hand. "Pucci!" Yun Maozhe spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he fell out of the clouds in an extremely sorry state and heavily smashed onto the ground. Outside, the onlooking disciples basically couldn't see the battle that happened in the clouds. However, the moment Yun Maozhe was blasted out of the clouds, he immediately attracted the attention of many people. When they discovered that this sorry figure was actually Yun Maozhe, they all fell silent. Yuani took a few steps back and looked at this scene in disbelief. She was not a fool. Now, she finally knew that this Zhuowen was not a coward. Instead, he was an expert that even Yun Maozhe was not a match for. As for why this Zhuowen had not moved before, she had also guessed the reason. Most likely, in his eyes, they, the eldest disciples, were simply not enough, so he disdained to compete with them. The clouds dispersed, and a white figure stood motionless on the first step like a mountain. It seemed that he did not move at all. Obviously, in the battle just now, Yun Maozhe could not even make this person move a step. As long as one was not a fool, one would know how big the gap between Yun Maozhe and this person was. At this moment, the onlooking disciples did not dare to doubt the strength of this white-clothed youth. Even Yun Maozhe was easily defeated by him. Was there still a need to doubt this kind of strength? Yuanhe's beautiful eyes flickered. She glanced at the white-clothed youth standing on the first step like a boulder, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a complicated and guilty expression. It was laughable that she had previously mocked this person as a coward. Now, she was ruthlessly slapped in the face by this battle. She glanced at the position beside Zhuowen and hesitated for a moment. In the end, she still opened her mouth and said, "Senior Brother Long, the position beside you." Zhuowen smiled slightly and said, "Senior Sister Yuanhe, you and I are both representatives of the Desire Palace. This position is for you." When Yuanhe saw the smile on Zhuowen's face, the guilt on her face became even more intense. She even stuttered when she spoke. She walked to the position beside Zhuowen and lowered her head. She did not dare to look at Zhuowen as she softly said, "Thank you, Senior Brother Long." Zhuowen only smiled. Previously, Yuanhe's performance had indeed made him loathe the latter. However, this position was given to him by Palace Master Jingyan. Now that he had already snatched 2 positions, he naturally had to give them to Yuanhe. Otherwise, Palace Master Jingyan would lose face. After a long while, Yun Maozhe finally stood up. His face was pale, but the resentment in his eyes was even more intense. He glanced at Zhuowen, and without saying a word, he chose the last remaining position on the 6th step. Palace Master Wu Ju did not show any favoritism. After the 12 people had chosen their positions, she once again gave Desireless an order. Soon after, Desireless finally released the might of the 6 Desires Hell. Bang! In an instant, The hellfire at the bottom of the steps was like the mouth of a ferocious beast. It fiercely rushed up and enveloped all 12 people on the steps. If one were to observe carefully, the sixth step was the closest to the bottom. Therefore, it was the place that came into contact with the hellfire the most. It was also the place that was the most torturous. Yin Maozhe once again spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became even paler. He had already suffered serious injuries. Now that he was hit by the hellfire, his injuries were naturally worsened. Zhuan frowned slightly. When the hellfire arrived, he didn't feel the scorching heat that flames should have. Instead, he felt an extreme chill. The instant this chill invaded his body, he clearly felt his 5 senses being gradually stripped away. The pain of having his 5 senses stripped away caused even Zhuan to break out in cold sweat. This pain was much more intense than being skinned alive. Zhuan thought that this was merely the first step. If it was the 6th step, the pain would be several times more intense. Just as Zhuan was thinking about this, his divine sense sensed that Yin Maozhe and another disciple on the 6th step had already let out miserable cries. Those cries would cause one's hair to stand on end. The disciple standing beside Yin Maozhe only lasted for 10 breaths of time before fainting. His entire body twitched, and white foam came out of his mouth. Fortunately, the instant that disciple fainted, Palace Master Wu Ju used her divine power to pull him out. On the other hand, although Yun Maozhe's cries were very miserable, he was still barely able to endure. Time slowly passed. Of the 12 people on the 6 Desires Hell, only 6 remained. They were Zhuan, Yuan He, Qi Lan, Ten Kai, Yao Xiangjuan, and Yun Maozhe. At this moment, only half of the time had passed. Chapter 2448. Past the test, asterisk plop. Asterisk Yuan He, who was sitting cross-legged beside Zhuan, suddenly fell to the ground and fainted. Zhuan didn't have the time to pay attention to Yuan He. Instead, he silently endured the pain of his 5 senses being stripped away. This kind of pain wasn't instantaneous. Instead, it gradually deepened. It was like a skinner. He didn't peel off your skin all at once. Instead, he slowly separated your skin from your flesh bit by bit. This kind of pain was continuous. Moreover, it became more and more painful. Yuan He was pulled out by Wu Jue. At this moment, there were only 5 people left on the platform. After an hour had passed, the remaining 5 people had all persevered. After Palace Master Wu Jue withdrew the Hell of 6 Desires, Yin Maozhe, who was sitting on the 6th platform, immediately fell to the ground and actually fainted. As for Qi Lan and Tan Kai, although they didn't faint, they fell into a state of unconsciousness. In fact, they weren't far from fainting. Yao Xiangjuan's performance was extremely good. Although her face was pale, her consciousness was extremely clear. She opened her eyes and looked around in confusion. Zhuan slowly opened his eyes. His condition was the best. His vitality was much better than Yao Xiangjuan's. It was as if he wasn't affected by the Hell of 6 Desires at all. The 6 palace masters glanced at Zhuan at the same time. Obviously, Zhuan's performance was beyond their expectations. Congratulations to the 5 of you for obtaining the qualifications to enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. In 3 days, I will open the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. I hope that you won't be late. After Palace Master Wu Jue finished speaking, she grabbed Yin Maozhe and slowly entered the Palace of Desire. As for Desireless, he was like a walking corpse as he followed behind Palace Master Wu Jue. Yao Xiangjuan stood up and smiled at Zhuan. "Seen your brother long? Congratulations." Zhuan cupped his hands and returned the greeting. "The main reason I have this opportunity is because of Miss Yao and Palace Master Jingyan. I still have to thank you." Speaking up to here, Zhuan looked at Yao Xiangjuan in astonishment and said, "Miss Yao, it seems that your willpower is really strong. It seems that you haven't been affected too much." At this point, Zhuan couldn't help but glance at Qi Lan and Tan Kai, who were in an unconscious state. These 2 fellows were sitting on the 2nd step, while Yao Xiangjuan was sitting on the third step. In terms of geographical position, Yao Xiangjuan was slightly inferior to these two, but the impact on Yao Xiangjuan was actually smaller. As for Qi and Tan Kai, they almost fainted. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes revealed a touch of imperceptible sadness as she whispered, "Maybe I'm used to it." "Are you used to it?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were a little panicked, as if she had said something wrong. She hesitated, but did not continue to speak. Zhuowen was puzzled, but he smiled and said, "I was a little impulsive on this matter. I shouldn't have casually asked." Zhuowen knew that Yao Xiangjuan must have her own secret to be able to pass through the Six Desires Hell so easily. Wasn't he, Zhuowen, the same? If it wasn't for his divine sense being abnormally strong, he wouldn't have been able to pass through the Six Desires Hell so easily. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuowen with a trace of gratitude in her eyes. "Senior Brother Long, I'll go back first. We'll meet again in 3 days." Yao Xiangjuan finished speaking and entered the Palace of Desire. At this moment, the other palace masters also left with their respective disciples. "Senior Brother Long, I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai before. Please forgive me." After sending Yao Xiangjuan off, Yuan He came in front of Zhuowen and lowered her head to Zhuowen with a guilty look. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jingyun behind Yuan He. He knew that Yuan He came to apologize under the instructions of Palace Master Jingyun. Moreover, Yuan He was unconscious before, but now he was awake. It should be Palace Master Jingyun who came. "Senior Sister Yuan He is too polite. It's just a small matter. What's there to mention?" Zhuowen said with a smile. Yuan He let out a light breath and immediately said, "Senior Brother Long, your cultivation is high. It's not appropriate to call me Senior Sister. Just call me Junior Sister Yuan He." "Okay." Zhuowen nodded. "Long One, Yuan He, let's go. The Six Desires Heavenly Lake will open in 3 days. It's useless to stay here now." Palace Master Jingyun's voice sounded. 3 days later, Palace Master Jingyun once again brought Zhuowen to the square outside the Palace of Desire. At this moment, Palace Master Xianglan and Palace Master Hua Ting had already arrived in the square. They brought Tan Kai and Qi Lan respectively. Tan Kai glanced at Zhuowen, his eyes full of fear, but he didn't say a word. On the other hand, Qi Lan gave Zhuowen a friendly smile, and Zhuowen also returned a smile. Palace Master Hua Ting saw Qi Lan's small action and couldn't help but ask softly, "Qi Lan, you know this Long One?" Qi Lan respectfully said, "Palace Master, I only met Senior Brother Long a few times. I also met him in the garden. After chatting, I found that Senior Brother Long is a good person." Hua Ting nodded, as if she was muttering to herself. "I heard from Jingyun that this Long One seems to be a rogue cultivator. Moreover, he's not that old. It's really commendable for him to have such strength." Qi Lan's beautiful eyes revealed a strange color. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very strong, she really didn't know that Zhuowen was actually a rogue cultivator. She always thought that Zhuowen must have a very strong force behind him. That's why Zhuowen could have such powerful strength. She didn't expect that he was just a rogue cultivator. Qi Lan looked at Zhuowen with even more reverence. For a rogue cultivator to be able to cultivate to such a level, what kind of perseverance and opportunity did it require? At least, Qi Lan knew that she definitely couldn't do it. Zhuowen naturally didn't know about the conversation between Qi Lan and Hua Ting. He also didn't know that Qi Lan inexplicably gave him a good person card. Now, he was looking forward to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Zhuowen was very clear that as long as his original body's cultivation could use the Six Desires Heavenly Lake to enter the 8 steps void sky, then his original body's strength alone would have a qualitative change. At that time, his divine ability, Waning Sun in the Sea, would have no restrictions. At that time, his strength would be comparable to the life in Lightning Realm. It could be said that the Six Desires Heavenly Lake this time had a crucial effect on his advancement. Therefore, he couldn't help but be excited. Just as Zhuowen was deep in thought, the door of Desire Palace opened. Palace Master Wu Ju brought Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhe out. 3 Palace Masters, you also know the location of the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. Now follow me. The moment Palace Master Wu Ju came out, he took out a sparkling and translucent flying divine tool and brought Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhe up. Zhuowen also noticed that Desireless was already on the flying divine tool. He thought in his heart, could it be that Desireless is also going to follow me? Palace Master Jing Yun brought Zhuowen and followed the other 2 Palace Masters into the flying divine tool. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.